They left me to die on a pharmacy floor because they did not want to miss the midnight buffet. My wife looked at the doctor, heard him say that I might not survive the night, and she checked her watch. She chose a Royal Caribbean cruise over my life, but she made a mistake. She thought she would come back to a funeral and a fat inheritance check. Instead, she came back to a ghost who had liquidated everything. I did not just survive to recover. I survived to make sure that when they returned, they would wish they had drowned at sea. Before I tell you how I executed the most brutal financial revenge in history, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you believe that betrayal should always have a price tag. My name is Caleb Moss. I am 68 years old. For 40 years, I was the man who built half the foundations in this city. I poured concrete until my hands were permanently rough. I inhaled dust so my son could inhale the fresh air of private schools. I broke my back so my wife Lucille could wear silk to church every Sunday. I thought I was the patriarch of a loving family. I thought the empire I built was for us. I was wrong. I was just the wallet. And wallets do not get to have medical emergencies during vacation week. It happened on a Tuesday evening inside a CVS on 4th Street. I was there to pick up my blood pressure medication. It was a mundane errand. I was standing in aisle 4 looking at a row of vitamins when the world suddenly tilted on its axis. It started as a hum in my ears like a high-tension wire snapping. Then my left hand refused to obey me. I tried to reach for a bottle of aspirin, but my fingers were dead weight. The plastic bottle slipped from my grip and hit the linoleum floor. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet store. I tried to bend down to pick it up. That was when my legs turned to water. I did not fall gracefully. I crumbled. I hit the hard, cold tiles with a thud that knocked the wind out of me. My cheek pressed against the dirty floor. I saw dust bunnies under the shelf. I smelled the sharp chemical scent of floor wax and rubbing alcohol. I tried to push myself up, but my body had gone on strike. My left side was gone, just gone. It felt like I was trapped inside a statue. Panic should have set in, but it didn't. Confusion did. I tried to call out for help, but when I opened my mouth, only a garbled, wet noise came out. My tongue felt too big for my mouth. A woman in blue scrubs, probably a pharmacist assistant, rounded the corner. She gasped. Her eyes went wide. I saw my reflection in her glasses. I looked broken. "Sir, can you hear me?" she shouted, dropping to her knees beside me. She touched my shoulder. I tried to nod. I couldn't. "Call 911. "We have a code blue in aisle 4, she screamed to the front of the store. The lights overhead were too bright. They burned my retinas. I felt a cold sweat breaking out over my forehead. My chest felt like an elephant was sitting on it. But through the haze of pain and paralysis, my mind was terrifyingly clear. I knew what was happening. My father died of a stroke. My grandfather died of a stroke. It was the Moss family curse. I was dying, right there next to the discount candy and greeting cards. The paramedics arrived in a blur of motion and static noise. They were efficient. They cut my shirt open. They stuck pads to my chest. One of them, a young man with a focused face, rifled through my wallet to find my ID. "Caleb Moss, 68, he called out. "We need to notify next of kin." The pharmacist handed him my phone, which had skittered across the floor when I fell. It was locked, but the emergency contact was accessible. Lucille Moss, my wife of 35 years, my partner, the woman I had given everything to. The paramedic put the phone on speaker as he worked on my IV line. I was fading in and out of consciousness, but my hearing was razor sharp. It is strange how the senses work when the body fails. I could hear the ringtone. 1 ring, 2 rings. "Hello." Lucille's voice filled the small space between the shelves. She sounded breathless, annoyed. "Mrs. Moss." "This is EMT Rodriguez with City Ambulance," the paramedic said, his voice urgent. "I am with your husband, Caleb. He has collapsed at the CVS on 4th Street. It appears to be a massive stroke. We are transporting him to General Hospital immediately." There was a pause. I waited for the scream. I waited for the panic. I waited for her to ask which hospital. Instead, I heard the background noise. I heard an airport announcement. I heard the distinct chime of a terminal gate opening. I heard my daughter-in-law, Courtney, laughing in the distance. "A stroke," Lucille said. "Are you sure Caleb has been complaining about dizziness all week? He is probably just dehydrated." "Ma'am, this is not dehydration," the paramedic said, his tone hardening. "His left side is paralyzed. His pressure is 200/110. This is life-threatening. You need to meet us at the hospital. Another pause, longer this time. Then Lucille sighed. It was a heavy, irritated sigh, the kind she made when the waiter brought her the wrong wine. We can't, she said. I felt a coldness wash over me that had nothing to do with the stroke. Excuse me, the paramedic asked, stopping his work for a split second. We are at the airport, Lucille said, her voice steady and cold. We are boarding our flight to Miami in 10 minutes to catch the Royal Caribbean cruise. The entire family is here. The tickets are non-refundable and we have been planning this for a year. I lay there staring at the fluorescent lights. My heart was beating sluggishly, but it was breaking into a million pieces. Ma'am, did you hear me? The paramedic almost shouted. Your husband could die tonight. You need to come now. Look, Lucille snapped. Even if we turned around now, the traffic is terrible. We would miss the flight. If he is at the hospital, he is in good hands. There is nothing I can do there except sit in a waiting room. Caleb is strong. He is probably exaggerating the symptoms anyway. He always loves the drama. Exaggerating. I tried to scream. I tried to roar. I wanted to tell her that I was lying in my own saliva, unable to move a finger, but all that came out was a low moan. He is moaning, ma'am, the paramedic said, holding the phone closer to my face. He is conscious. He can hear you. I hoped that would break her. I hoped the sound of my suffering would cut through her selfishness. Well, tell him to calm down, Lucille said. Tell him we will call when we dock in 2 days. We have limited cell service at sea. Damon, stop that. That was her talking to our son. Damon, get the bags. They are calling our group. Mrs. Moss, this is negligence, the paramedic warned. Watch your tone, she hissed. I am his wife. I am making an executive decision. He has the best doctors. We have a vacation. We will see him in a week. Goodbye. The line went dead. The silence that followed was heavier than the stroke. The paramedic looked down at me. For the first time, I saw pity in his eyes. He didn't see a wealthy contractor. He saw a discarded object. Let's move, he yelled to his partner. They lifted me onto the stretcher. The world blurred as they rushed me out to the ambulance. The siren wailed, but it sounded distant. Inside the ambulance, the medic kept working, but I had stopped fighting for my life. Why fight? Why survive? To go back to that empty house to pay for the cruise they were currently enjoying. We arrived at the ER. Doors flew open. White coats swarmed me. I was transferred to a trauma bed. A doctor with gray hair shone a light in my eyes. Mr. Moss squeezed my hand, he commanded. I couldn't. We need to operate to relieve the pressure, the doctor said to a nurse. Get the wife on the phone again. We need consent, or we have to proceed with 2 physician sign-off. I tried. She hung up, the paramedic said quietly from the corner. She said they are on a cruise. The doctor stopped. He looked at the paramedic, then down at me. He shook his head in disbelief. Record that in the chart, the doctor said, his voice grim. Family refused to return. Patient is abandoned. Proceeding with emergency life-saving measures. Patient is abandoned. Those 3 words echoed in my mind as the anesthesia mask came down over my face. The darkness began to creep in at the edges of my vision. I felt the pull of the void. It would be so easy to let go, to just drift away and die. It would serve them right. They would come back and have to plan a funeral. They would have to wear black and pretend to cry. But then a new thought sparked in the darkness. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't grief. It was a hot red ember of rage. If I died, they won. If I died, Lucille would get the $2 million life insurance policy. Damon would get the construction company. Courtney would move into my house and throw out my things. They would toast to my memory with the expensive champagne I paid for. No. I pushed back against the darkness. The beeping of the monitor sped up. My heart was broken, yes, but it was still beating. And as long as it was beating, I had a weapon. I had the one thing they loved more than me. I had the money. I looked up at the ceiling tiles one last time before my eyes closed. I made a silent vow to the ceiling, to God, and to the devil himself. I will not die tonight. I will live. And when I wake up, I'm going to become their worst nightmare. They wanted a vacation, fine. I was going to make sure that when they returned, their lives would be a permanent hell. The darkness took me. But I didn't go into the light. I went into the war room. The silence was the first thing I noticed. It was not a peaceful silence. It was a heavy, industrial silence that pressed against my eardrums. It sounded like the hum of a refrigerator in an empty house. I opened my eyes. The light was dim. The air smelled of antiseptic and floor wax. I was alive. That was the first surprise. I tried to move my head. A sharp pain shot down my neck, but I welcomed it. Pain meant nerves were firing. Pain meant I was not a vegetable. I looked to my left. My arm was strapped to a board with tubes running into my veins. I looked to my right. There was a plastic chair. It was empty. I stared at that chair for a long time. In the movies, when a patriarch wakes up from a brush with death, the room is filled with flowers. There are weeping children holding his hand. There is a wife praying in the corner. There is a sense of relief that floods the room. But my room was sterile. The bedside table was bare. No roses, no cards, no balloons. Just a plastic pitcher of water and my wallet sitting there like a mockery. They left the wallet. Of course they left the wallet. They did not need the physical leather object. They had the credit card numbers memorized. A nurse walked in. Her name tag said Maria. She was a big woman with kind eyes and tired shoulders. She stopped when she saw my eyes were open. She did not smile. She looked relieved but also sad. That sadness told me everything I needed to know. She knew I had been abandoned. She had probably been the one to change my sheets while my family was at the buffet. "Mr. Moss," she said softly, "you are back with us." I tried to speak. My voice was a rusty gate. It scratched my throat. How long, I asked. The words were slurred. My left lip felt numb. 2 days, she said. You have been in and out. The doctors were very worried. 2 days. 48 hours. That meant the cruise ship was well into international waters. That meant they had already had 2 dinners. 2 breakfasts, 2 nights of dancing. I looked at the empty chair again. The rage I felt before the surgery had cooled down into something harder. It felt like concrete setting in my chest. "Where are they?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. Maria looked at her clipboard. She could not meet my eyes. "We called the number on file," she said. "Your wife said they would check in when they had signal. She said to tell you to rest and not to worry about the medical bills because you have good insurance." I almost laughed. It would have been a bitter, dry sound. She was worried about the insurance copay. She was not worried about whether I would ever walk again. "Give me my phone," I said. Maria hesitated. "Mr. Moss, you need to rest. Your blood pressure is still volatile." "Give me the phone," I repeated. I put every ounce of authority I had left into those 4 words. I might be half paralyzed, but I was still Caleb Moss. She reached into the drawer and handed me the device. It felt heavy in my right hand. My left hand was just a piece of meat lying on the bed. I used my thumb to unlock the screen. My background picture was a photo of the whole family at Thanksgiving last year. Everyone was smiling. I looked at that photo and realized I was the only one paying for the food on that table. I was the only one paying for the clothes on their backs. I opened Instagram. I did not have to search for them. The algorithm knew who I interacted with most. The first post on my feed was from Jasmine, my daughter, my princess, the girl I had carried on my shoulders, the girl whose student loans I paid off in a single check so she would not have debt. There she was. The photo was high definition. The colors were vibrant. The sky was a perfect azure blue. The ocean glittered behind her. Jasmine was wearing a white designer swimsuit that cost more than my first car. She was holding a flute of champagne. She was laughing. Her head was thrown back and her hand was resting on the railing of the ship. Next to her was Courtney, my daughter-in-law, wearing a sun hat. They looked radiant. They looked rich. They looked unburdened. I looked at the timestamp, posted 3 hours ago. While I was lying here wondering if I would ever walk again, they were having mimosas on the deck. Then I read the caption. "Trying to find peace in the middle of the ocean. Please keep my daddy in your prayers as he fights for his recovery. We are doing our best to stay strong and heal our spirits during this difficult time. Hashtag family first. Hashtag prayers. For Dad, hashtag healing journey." I stared at the words. Healing journey. They called a luxury cruise a healing journey. They were using my near-death experience to get likes and sympathy. I scrolled down to the comments. "So brave of you," Jasmine, one friend wrote. "Sending love, babe, you deserve this break," wrote another. My stomach churned. It was not nausea, it was disgust. Pure visceral disgust. They were not just absent, they were capitalizing on my tragedy. They were performing grief while drinking Dom Perignon on my dime. I swiped left. There was a video on her story. It was a boomerang of them clinking glasses with the caption, "Toast to life." To life. They were toasting to life while leaving me to death. I looked at the empty chair in my hospital room one last time. That chair was not empty. It was occupied by the ghost of the man I used to be. The man who forgave them. The man who wrote checks to smooth over arguments. The man who thought love meant providing. That man died on the floor of the CVS. The man in the bed was someone else. This man did not have a family. This man had debtors. And the loan was due. I closed Instagram. I did not throw the phone. I did not scream. I was done with drama. I needed precision. I opened my contacts list. I scrolled past Lucille. I scrolled past Damon. I stopped at the name Goldberg. Sarah Goldberg was not family. She was better. She was my lawyer. She was a shark in a tailored suit who had been telling me for years that my family was bleeding me dry. I always told her to hush. I told her she was cynical. I was about to tell her she was a prophet. I pressed call. It rang twice. "Caleb," her voice was sharp. "I heard you were in the ICU. I called the hospital, but they said only family could visit." I was about to come down there and threaten to sue the administration. "Hello, Sarah," I said. My voice was stronger now. The anger was fueling me. My God. "Caleb, are you okay? Where is Lucille? Is she there?" "She is on a boat," I said. "What?" "She is on a boat." "Sarah, they are all on a boat. They left me." There was silence on the other end. Sarah Goldberg was rarely speechless. "Okay," she said slowly. Her tone shifted. It went from concerned friend to war general. "What do you want to do?" "Caleb," I looked at my paralyzed left hand. I looked at the plastic water pitcher. I looked at the lie on Instagram. "I want to initiate the protocol," I said. "Which one?" Sarah asked. "We have the estate planning drafts. We have the trust funds." "No," I said. "The other one. The one we joked about 5 years ago. The scorched earth protocol." Sarah paused. I could hear her taking a breath. "You mean the liquidation event, Caleb, that is nuclear. That wipes them out. They will lose the houses, the cars, the access to the accounts. Everything." "I know," I said. "If we do this, there is no going back," Sarah warned. "You can't undo a sale of this magnitude. You are talking about erasing their entire lifestyle in 24 hours. "They erased me first, Sarah," I said. "I am dead to them. So let them be dead to my bank account. I want you to bring the papers to the hospital. Not tomorrow. Now. Bring the power of attorney. Bring the transfer deeds. And Sarah, bring a voice recorder. I want to make a new will." "Who is the beneficiary?" she asked. "I don't know yet," I said. "Find me a charity for dogs. Find me a shelter for the homeless. Find me anyone who doesn't share my last name. Just get here. I am on my way," she said. "I will be there in 20 minutes. "Caleb." "Yes. I am sorry." "Don't be," I said. I finally see clearly. I hung up the phone. I lay back against the pillow. The beeping of the monitor sounded different now. It didn't sound like a countdown to death anymore. It sounded like a countdown to their destruction. I closed my eyes and waited for my lawyer. The cruise lasted 5 more days. That gave me plenty of time. By the time they docked, they would be returning to a crater. I took a deep breath. For the first time in 40 years, I felt free. Sarah Goldberg walked into my hospital room 20 minutes later. She did not knock. She did not bring flowers. She brought a leather briefcase that looked heavy enough to crush a man. She placed it on the rolling table that usually held my bland hospital food. She looked at me with eyes that had seen every kind of divorce and bankruptcy in the city, but even she looked rattled today. I told the nurse to leave us alone. I told her that if she interrupted us, I would buy this hospital and fire her. It was a bluff, but it worked. The door clicked shut, and I was alone with the architect of my revenge. Sarah opened the briefcase. Stacks of documents spilled out. They were thick legal briefs with yellow sticky notes on the signature lines. "Are you sure about this, Caleb?" she asked. Her voice was low. "This is not just moving money. This is a declaration of war. Once I file these with the court in Nevada, the assets are locked. You cannot get them back easily. Your wife cannot touch them. But the IRS will be watching. The family court will be watching." I looked at the papers. I saw the numbers. They represented 40 years of waking up at 4 in the morning. They represented the concrete dust in my lungs. They represented the missed holidays because I was on a job site. Do it, I said. My right hand was shaking as I picked up the pen. My left hand was still useless, but I did not need two hands to destroy my family. I only needed one signature. We are moving the liquid cash first, Sarah explained as she pointed to the first document. $7 million from the joint savings account. I am transferring it to the blind trust. The beneficiary is an LLC that you control, but your name is not on. Lucille will go to the ATM tomorrow and she will see a zero balance. Good, I said. I signed my name. The ink was black and permanent. Next are the investment portfolios, Sarah continued. The stocks, the bonds, the retirement accounts. We are liquidating the positions and moving the capital into offshore real estate holdings. If they try to sue for this money, they will have to sue 3 different shell companies in 3 different countries. It will take them 10 years and $1 million in legal fees just to find out where the money went. I signed again. I felt a surge of adrenaline. It was better than any medicine the doctors had given me. Each signature felt like I was cutting a cord. I was cutting the cord to Damon's gambling debts. I was cutting the cord to Courtney's shopping sprees. I was cutting the cord to Lucille's hypocrisy. Sarah hesitated on the last document. This is the big one, Caleb. This is the deed transfer for the rental properties, the apartment complexes on the east side, the ones that generate the monthly income that pays for Hunter's car and Jasmine's apartment. Transfer them, I commanded. Sarah looked at me. Caleb, these kids rely on that income. They have never worked a real job in their lives. If you cut this off, they will be destitute in a month. They have mortgages. They have car payments. They have a father who is lying in a hospital bed while they drink margaritas, I said. I looked her dead in the eye. Sign the papers, Sarah, or I find a lawyer who will. She nodded slowly. She handed me the pen for the last time. I signed. It was done. I dropped the pen on the bed sheets. I felt lighter. I felt empty, but it was a clean emptiness. It was the feeling of a demolition site after the building has finally come down. I checked myself out of the hospital the next morning. The doctors screamed. They told me I was a walking time bomb. They told me I needed physical therapy. They told me my blood pressure was a ticking clock. I did not listen. I signed the discharge papers with the same cold hand that had signed away my fortune. I called a private ambulance service to take me home, not to rest, but to work. The ambulance pulled up to the driveway of my estate. It was a sprawling mansion that I had built with my own hands 10 years ago. It had 6 bedrooms and 7 bathrooms. It had a pool that I never swam in. It had a home theater that I never used. It was a monument to my success, and it was a prison for my soul. I walked up the front steps using a cane. My left leg dragged a little, but I forced it to move. I entered the code to the front door. The house was silent. It smelled of Lucille's expensive lavender potpourri. It smelled of lies. I did not sit down. I called the moving company I had hired from the hospital bed. They were a specialized crew. They did not ask questions. They just moved heavy things fast. They arrived in 3 large trucks. 10 men in uniforms marched into my house like an army. I sat on a folding chair in the middle of the grand foyer and I began to issue orders. I pointed to the living room. Take it all, I said. The Italian leather sofas, the crystal chandelier, the Persian rugs that cost more than a Honda Civic. Take it. I watched them wrap Lucille's collection of porcelain dolls. She loved those dolls more than she loved our children. She spent hours dusting them. Put them in the truck, I said. Are we moving them to storage, sir? One of the movers asked. No, I said. Take them to the auction house. Sell them. Whatever doesn't sell, donate it. Whatever they don't want, throw it in the trash. I went to Damon's room. It was preserved like a shrine, even though he was 32 years old. His high school football trophies were lined up on the shelf. Participation trophies. Trophies for showing up. Trash, I said. The movers hesitated. Sir, these look personal. Trash, I repeated. I watched them sweep the trophies into a black garbage bag. The sound of plastic cracking was music to my ears. We went to the dining room. The table was set for 12 people. We never had 12 people over. It was just for show. Clear it, I ordered. They took the silver. They took the china. They took the table itself. The house began to echo. The sound of boots on hardwood floors became louder as the furniture disappeared. The walls looked naked without the expensive art. I stared at a painting of a ship that hung over the fireplace. It was an oil painting of a storm at sea. Lucille bought it because it matched the curtains. Leave that one, I said. Why, sir? The mover asked. Because it reminds me of where they are, I said. Let them have the storm. By sunset, the house was a skeleton. The curtains were gone, the rugs were gone, the bookshelves were empty. The silence was absolute. It was not the silence of a home, it was the silence of a tomb. But it was not my tomb, it was theirs. I walked through the empty rooms one last time. My footsteps echoed sharply. I went into the master bedroom. The bed was gone. The closet was empty. Lucille's clothes were all packed in boxes destined for a charity shop downtown. I imagined her face when she realized her designer dresses were being sold for $5 apiece. I allowed myself a small smile. It was time to go. The sun was dipping below the horizon, casting long shadows across the empty floor. I walked to the fireplace in the living room. It was the only thing left that I could not move. The marble mantelpiece was cold under my hand. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a single white envelope. Inside was the bill from the hospital, the one for $48,000, the one that listed every charge for saving the life they didn't care about. I took a piece of heavy-duty tape and I stuck the envelope right in the center of the marble. It was the only decoration left in the house. I took a marker and I wrote on the front of the envelope in big block letters, "Welcome home." I walked to the front door. The air in the house felt stale. I opened the door and breathed in the cool evening air. It tasted like freedom. I turned to the security panel on the wall. This was the final step. The code had been the kids' birthdays for 20 years. Everyone knew it. Damon knew it. Hunter knew it. Even the gardener knew it. I pressed the reset button. I punched in a new code. 0000. Nothing. Because that is what they were getting. Nothing. The lock beeped and turned green. The system was armed. The old codes were erased. If they tried to enter now, the silent alarm would trigger and the police would be here in 3 minutes. I stepped out onto the porch and pulled the heavy oak door shut behind me. The lock clicked. A solid mechanical sound. It was the sound of a vault closing. I walked down the driveway to where my taxi was waiting. I did not look back at the house. I did not look back at the life I had built. That life was over. Caleb Moss, the provider, was dead. Caleb Moss, the avenger, was just getting started. I got into the taxi and told the driver to take me to the airport hotel. I had a front row seat to the show that was about to begin, and I didn't want to be late. The cruise ship would be docking in 4 days, and I would be ready. 5 days later, the silence of my estate was broken by the sound of a diesel engine. A yellow airport taxi idled at the bottom of the driveway. It was a hot, humid afternoon, the kind of heat that sticks your shirt to your back the moment you step outside. But my family was not used to the heat. They had spent the last week in climate-controlled cabins and breezy decks. They stepped out of the taxi looking like a parade of peacocks. Lucille was wearing a wide-brimmed straw hat and oversized sunglasses. She looked like a movie star from a bad soap opera. She stood by the trunk of the taxi and tapped her foot impatiently. She was waiting for the driver to unload the 6 massive suitcases they had dragged halfway across the Caribbean. Damon was next. He was wearing a linen shirt that was unbuttoned too low, showing off a sunburned chest. He looked around the driveway with a scowl on his face. "Where is he?" Damon asked. His voice carried up the driveway. He did not sound concerned. He sounded annoyed. He sounded like a customer whose waiter was slow with the check. "I told him we were landing at noon," Lucille snapped. She pulled out her phone and dialed my number. I watched the screen of my burner phone light up in my pocket miles away. I let it ring. "He is not picking up," she said. She shoved the phone back into her designer bag. Unbelievable. He probably forgot. He has been so dramatic lately with this blood pressure nonsense. Courtney stepped out of the taxi last. She was holding a fan and waving it in front of her face. She looked at the taxi driver with pure disdain as he struggled to lift a heavy bag. "Be careful with that," she barked. "That bag contains fragile ceramics. If you break it, you are buying it." The driver muttered something under his breath and set the bag down on the asphalt. He looked like he wanted to leave them there. I did not blame him. Hunter, the so-called financial genius of the family, refused to help with the bags. He was too busy typing on his phone, probably checking the stock market with money that no longer existed. "I cannot believe we have to walk up the driveway," Courtney whined. She kicked a small pebble with her expensive sandal. "Why didn't he open the gate? This is ridiculous. My feet are swollen from the flight." "He is probably sleeping," Jasmine said. She was adjusting her hair, making sure she looked good for her arrival selfie. Or maybe he is sulking because we didn't take him. You know how jealous he gets. They stood there at the bottom of the driveway like stranded royalty. They expected the gates to part for them. They expected the red carpet. They expected me to come running down the hill apologizing for my absence. But the gate remained closed. The iron bars were cold and unmoving. Hunter finally sighed and walked over to the keypad mounted on the brick pillar. He punched in the code. The same code we had used for 20 years. The birthdays of the twins. Beep, 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 buzz. The red light on the panel flashed. Access denied. Hunter frowned. He typed it again. Harder this time. As if pressing the buttons with more force would make the electronics obey him. Buzz. What is wrong with it? Lucille asked, wiping sweat from her forehead. It is not working, Hunter said. The system must be down. Old man probably forgot to pay the electric bill again. Let me try, Damon said. He pushed Hunter aside and typed in the code. Buzz. This is a joke, Courtney said. I am melting out here. Call him again, Lucille. Tell him to open the damn gate. He is not answering. Lucille screamed at the intercom speaker. Caleb, open this gate right now. I have luggage. I have a headache. Stop playing games. The intercom was silent. The only sound was the chirping of cicadas in the trees. The house sat on top of the hill looking down on them. It looked peaceful. It looked abandoned. We have to climb it, Damon said. Are you insane? Courtney shrieked. I am wearing a skirt. I am not climbing a 6-foot iron gate. Well, we can't stay here, Hunter said. The taxi is gone. We have to get inside to open it manually. I watched in my mind's eye as they struggled. It was a pathetic sight. Damon boosted Hunter up. The financial wizard slipped and tore his linen trousers on a spike. He cursed loudly. He landed on the other side with a heavy thud. He pressed the manual release button on the inside of the pillar. Nothing happened. I had cut the power to the gate motor. It is dead, Hunter yelled. You have to climb. It took them 20 minutes. 20 minutes of cursing and sweating and tearing their expensive vacation clothes. Lucille got a smudge of grease on her white dress. Courtney broke a nail and screamed as if she had lost a limb. They had to leave the bags on the street. They walked up the long, winding driveway, empty-handed and furious. They reached the front door. They were panting. Their faces were red. The vacation glow was gone, replaced by the ugly flush of rage. I am going to kill him, Lucille hissed. When I get inside, I am going to scream at him until he goes deaf. She marched up to the front door and punched the code into the smart lock. Buzz. She froze. She stared at the lock. She typed it again. Buzz. He changed it, she whispered. The realization hit her. He changed the codes. He locked us out, Jasmine said, her voice trembling. Is he insane? Break it, Hunter said. He picked up a heavy garden stone from the flower bed. Just break the window next to the door. We own the house. It is not breaking and entering if it is your own house. Hunter smashed the glass. It shattered with a loud crash. He reached in and turned the deadbolt. The door clicked open. They pushed inside, ready for a fight. They were ready to storm into the living room and find me sitting in my recliner. They were ready to unleash 5 days of accumulated entitlement. Damon was the first one through the door. Dad, what the hell is wrong with... He stopped. Lucille pushed past him. Caleb, where are... She stopped. The silence in the house was absolute. It was not the silence of a sleeping house. It was the silence of a vacuum. The living room was empty, not just tidy, empty. The Persian rugs were gone, revealing the bare hardwood underneath. The sofas were gone. The television was gone. The curtains had been ripped down, leaving the windows staring like blind eyes. The footsteps of the family echoed on the wood. Clack, clack, clack. It sounded like they were walking in a museum after closing time. We have been robbed, Courtney screamed. Her hands flew to her mouth. Oh my God, we have been robbed. They took everything. Lucille ran to the dining room, empty. She ran to the kitchen. The counters were bare. The coffee maker was gone. The toaster was gone. My dolls, she wailed. She ran towards the stairs. My collection. They ran through the house like rats in a maze. Bedroom after bedroom. Closet after closet. Nothing. No clothes. No jewelry. No electronics. Even the toilet paper holders were empty. This wasn't a robbery, Hunter said, standing in the middle of the living room. His voice was shaking. Robbers don't take the curtains. Robbers don't take the family photos. "Then where is it?" Damon yelled. "Where is our stuff?" They gathered back in the living room. They were small figures in a large, empty box. The heat of the afternoon was starting to bake the air inside the house because the air conditioning had been turned off. Then Damon saw it. On the white marble mantelpiece of the fireplace there was a single object. It was a white envelope taped securely to the stone. It stood out like a beacon in the barren room. "What is that?" Lucille asked. Damon walked over to it. His footsteps echoed loudly. He ripped the envelope off the stone. "It is addressed to us," he said. "Open it," Lucille commanded. "Maybe it is a ransom note. Maybe he was kidnapped." Damon tore the envelope open. He pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was not a handwritten letter. It was a bill, a hospital invoice. "It is a medical bill," Damon said, confused. "It is for $48,000. Read the note attached," Hunter said. Damon flipped the paper over. There was a yellow sticky note attached to the back. He read it out loud. His voice cracked on the last word. "I am alive. The locks are changed. The assets are gone. Welcome to your new life. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises before the police arrive for trespassing." Lucille snatched the paper from his hand. She stared at my handwriting. Her face turned from red to a ghostly pale. "He did this," she whispered. She looked around the empty room. "He did this to us." "He is crazy," Courtney shouted. She stomped her foot and the sound rang out like a gunshot. "The old man has lost his mind. He thinks he can kick us out. This is our house too." "House." No, Hunter said. He was looking at his phone. He had just tried to log into the joint bank account. "I think we have a bigger problem." "What problem?" Jasmine asked. Hunter looked up. His face was gray. "The accounts are closed," he said. "All of them." Lucille screamed. It was a primal sound of greed being denied. She threw the hospital bill on the floor. "He can't do this," she screeched. "He is sick. He had a stroke. He is mentally unstable. We will sue him. We will take everything back." She looked at the empty spot where her favorite chair used to be. "Find him," she ordered. "Find the old bastard. I'm going to make him wish he had died in that hospital." They stood there in the wreckage of their expectations. They were tired, they were hot, they were broke, and they were just beginning to understand that the vacation was over, but they didn't know yet that the war had just begun, and they were unarmed. Hunter stood in the middle of the empty living room and stared at his phone screen with the intensity of a sniper. The air in the house was stifling and hot, but the look in his eyes was cold. He was not looking for a solution to their homelessness. He was looking for the money. He had installed a tracking app on my phone 3 years ago. He told me it was for my safety in case I fell on a construction site or got lost while driving. I knew even then that it was a lie. He wanted to know where I was so he could know when the bank was open and when I was meeting with my accountants. Now that little piece of spyware was the only weapon they had left. "There he is," Hunter shouted. He pointed a shaking finger at the blue dot pulsating on the map. "He is at the Grand Meridian Hotel downtown." The Grand Meridian was the most expensive hotel in the city. It was a place where foreign dignitaries and visiting royalty stayed. It was a place where a cup of coffee cost $15, and apparently it was where I was spending their inheritance. "He is spending our money," Lucille shrieked. Her face was flushed with a mixture of heat exhaustion and pure greed. "That selfish old man is burning through the trust fund while we are standing here sweating in our own house." "Call a taxi," Courtney ordered. "We are going down there. We are going to drag him out by his ear if we have to." They left their luggage on the front porch of the empty house because it wouldn't fit in the Uber. They piled into the car smelling of sweat and desperation. The ride to downtown was tense. Damon was punching the back of the driver's seat. Lucille was rehearsing her speech. She was going to play the victim. She was going to play the worried wife. She was going to tell the world that I was mentally incompetent and that she was his guardian angel coming to save him from himself. The taxi pulled up to the gleaming glass entrance of the Grand Meridian. The doorman in his pristine uniform stepped forward to open the door, but he paused when he saw them. They looked like refugees from a failed vacation. Lucille's expensive dress was wrinkled and stained with grease from the gate. Hunter's trousers were torn at the knee. Courtney's makeup was running down her face in streaks of black mascara. They pushed past the doorman without a word. They marched through the revolving doors and into the lobby. The air conditioning hit them like a wall of ice. The lobby smelled of fresh orchids and expensive leather. Soft piano music played in the background. It was a sanctuary of wealth, and they were the intruders. Lucille marched straight to the reception desk. Her heels clicked aggressively on the marble floor. There was a young woman behind the desk typing on a computer. She looked up with a polite smile that faltered when she saw the wild look in Lucille's eyes. "I need the room number for Caleb Moss," Lucille demanded. She slammed her hand on the counter. The receptionist blinked. "I am sorry, ma'am, but I cannot give out guest information for privacy reasons." "Do not give me that corporate nonsense," Lucille yelled. Her voice echoed off the high ceilings, causing several guests in the lounge to look up from their newspapers. "I am his wife. He is a sick man. He had a stroke 5 days ago. He is suffering from dementia and paranoia. He has stolen family funds and checked himself in here while confused. I need to get to him before he hurts himself." The receptionist looked alarmed. She reached for the phone. "Ma'am, if there is a medical emergency, I can call the paramedics." "I do not want paramedics," Courtney shouted, stepping up beside Lucille. "We want the room key. My father-in-law is mentally unstable. He thinks he is a millionaire tycoon, but he is just a confused old man. He is spending money he does not have. You need to let us up there right now, or we will sue this hotel for taking advantage of a disabled person." The manager stepped out from the back office. He was a tall man with a severe face. He adjusted his tie and walked over to the desk. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice low and controlled. "Yes, there is a problem," Lucille spat. "You are harboring a fugitive. My husband is upstairs burning through my children's inheritance. I demand you take me to him." "Ma'am," the manager said calmly. "Mr. Moss checked in yesterday. He appeared to be in full control of his faculties. He paid for the presidential suite in advance. We have strict instructions not to disturb him." "The presidential suite?" Damon groaned. "That is $5,000 a night. He is insane. Mom, he is going to drain the accounts in a week." Lucille's eyes bulged. She leaned over the counter, grabbing the manager's lapel. "Listen to me, you incompetent fool. He is sick. He does not know what he is doing. If you do not give me that key, I will scream until every guest in this lobby leaves. I will tell the press you abuse the elderly." "Security," the manager said quietly. 2 large men in dark suits materialized from the shadows of the lobby. They moved toward the family with practiced efficiency. "Don't you touch me," Courtney screamed, holding up her phone. "I am live streaming this. Everyone say hello to the Grand Meridian, where they kidnap old men and keep them from their families." The scene was chaotic. Lucille was sobbing fake tears. Damon was arguing with a security guard about his rights. Hunter was trying to sneak around the desk to look at the computer screen. They were loud. They were messy. They were everything I despised. Then the elevator chimed. It was a soft, melodic sound that cut through the noise. The golden doors of the center elevator slid open. The lobby went silent. I stepped out. I was not wearing a hospital gown. I was not drooling. I was not confused. I was wearing a bespoke navy blue suit that I had kept in storage for special occasions. My shoes were polished to a mirror shine. I leaned lightly on a cane with a silver handle, not because I needed it, but because it made me look like a king. Sarah Goldberg stood next to me holding her briefcase. She looked like a general flanking her commander. Caleb, Lucille gasped. She broke away from the security guard. "Oh, thank God." "Caleb, honey." She ran toward me. Her arms were open. She put on the face she used when she wanted a new car. The face of the devoted, loving wife. "We were so worried about you," she cried. "Why did you leave the hospital? Why did you empty the house? You must be confused. It is the stroke, isn't it? It has messed with your head. Come with us. We will take care of you." She reached out to hug me. She wanted to touch me. She wanted to reclaim her possession. I lifted the cane. I did not strike her. I simply placed the rubber tip of the cane against the center of her chest. I pushed. Not hard, just enough to stop her in her tracks. "Don't touch me," I said. My voice was not loud. I did not shout. But the tone was so cold it dropped the temperature in the room by 10 degrees. Lucille froze. She looked down at the cane pressing against her silk blouse. She looked up at my eyes. She saw something there she had never seen before. She saw a stranger. "Dad." "Please," Courtney said, lowering her phone but keeping the camera lens pointed at me. "We just want to help. You are sick. You need family." I looked at them. I looked at their sunburned faces. I looked at their greedy eyes. I looked at the way they were already calculating the cost of my suit. I don't have a family, I said. My voice carried clearly across the silent lobby. My family died on a cruise ship. What are you talking about? Damon asked, stepping forward. We are right here. We came back for you. You came back for the money, I said. I turned to the hotel manager who was watching the exchange with a mixture of shock and respect. Mr. Henderson, I said, addressing him by name. I apologize for the disturbance. These people are soliciting. Soliciting, Lucille sputtered. I am your wife. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was the copy of the divorce filing Sarah had prepared. I tossed it at Lucille's feet. Not anymore, I said. Mr. Henderson, I continued, ignoring her gasp. I believe the Grand Meridian has a policy against beggars harassing the paying guests. Please remove this trash from the lobby. It is beginning to smell like desperation in here. Caleb, you can't do this, Lucille screamed. She fell to her knees trying to grab the paper. I own half of everything. Security, remove them, Mr. Henderson ordered. The guards moved in. This time they were not gentle. They grabbed Damon by the arm as he tried to lunge at me. They took Courtney by the elbow as she shrieked about her followers. They lifted Lucille off the floor as she wailed my name. I did not watch them go. I turned my back on them. I pressed the button for the elevator. Caleb. Please, Hunter yelled as he was dragged toward the revolving doors. We have nowhere to go. The cards don't work. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. Sarah followed me. She looked at me and gave a small nod. That was brutal, she whispered. No, Sarah, I said as the doors closed, shutting out the screams of my former life. That was justice. Now, let's go order room service. I believe I have a hunger that only a very expensive steak can satisfy. After being thrown out of the Grand Meridian like common criminals, my family did what they always do when their ego is bruised. They decided to spend money. They needed to remind themselves that they were still the elite. They needed to prove that my little stunt in the hotel lobby was just a temporary glitch in their otherwise perfect lives. They hailed another taxi and directed the driver to Le Jardin. It is the kind of French restaurant where the menu has no prices and the waiters look at you with disdain if you do not order the vintage wine. I know exactly what they did because I know their habits. Lucille needs luxury to breathe. When she is stressed, she eats lobster. When she is angry, she drinks champagne that costs more than a mortgage payment. They marched into the restaurant smelling of sweat and desperation but holding their heads high. They demanded the best table near the window. They wanted to see and be seen. They wanted to wash away the memory of the security guards dragging them across the marble floor. They ordered everything. They ordered the seafood tower with king crab legs imported from Alaska. They ordered the Wagyu beef that is massaged daily before it is slaughtered. They ordered a bottle of Chateau Margaux that I had been saving in my cellar for a special occasion. They drank it like it was water. Lucille raised her glass. Her hands were still shaking from the encounter at the hotel, but her voice was steady. To resilience, she said, we will not let a sick old man ruin our lives. Tomorrow I am calling Dr. Sterling. We will have Caleb committed to a mental facility by noon. Then we will get power of attorney and undo all of this nonsense. Damon stuffed a piece of steak into his mouth. He chewed aggressively. He is delusional, Damon said. Did you see the suit he was wearing? He thinks he is some kind of movie villain. He is probably burning through his savings right now. We need to stop him before there is nothing left for us. Courtney was busy taking photos of the food. She arranged the silverware just so. She made sure the lighting was perfect. She posted the picture with the caption, treating ourselves after a traumatic day. Family strength is unbreakable. She did not mention that they were currently homeless and locked out of their estate. She did not mention that they had to climb over a fence to get to their front door. On social media, they were still the golden family. They ate with a hunger that was almost violent. They devoured the food as if they were afraid someone would take it away. And in a way they were right. This was the last meal of the condemned. They laughed loudly. They made fun of the waiter's accent. They complained that the bread was not warm enough. They were treating the staff like servants because they needed to feel like masters. They had no idea that the waiter they were snapping their fingers at had a higher net worth than all of them combined at that moment. The meal lasted 2 hours. They ordered dessert, they ordered espresso, they ordered cognac. They sat there in the cooling air conditioning and convinced themselves that everything was going to be fine. They convinced themselves that I was just a senile old man having a tantrum and that the world would right itself in the morning. Then the bill came. It arrived on a small silver tray inside a black leather folder. The waiter placed it gently on the table between Hunter and Lucille. He stepped back and clasped his hands behind his back. Lucille picked it up. She did not even look at the total. She simply pulled her Platinum American Express card from her purse. It was the heavy metal card, the one that makes a clanking sound when you drop it. She placed it on the tray with a flourish. "Put it on this," she said without looking up, "and add 20%. We are not savages." The waiter took the folder and walked to the terminal station near the wall. The family continued to talk. They were planning which lawyer to hire to sue me for emotional distress. They were discussing which nursing home would be the cheapest place to dump me once they regained control. Then I heard the sound. It was a sound I had been waiting for. Beep. The waiter frowned. He swiped the card again. Beep. He looked at the screen. He pulled the card out and wiped the chip on his apron. He inserted it again. Beep. The conversation at the table stopped. They sensed the shift in the atmosphere. The waiter walked back to the table. He was not smiling anymore. "Madame," he said loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear, "there seems to be a problem with your card. It has been declined." Lucille laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound. "That is impossible," she said. "That card has no limit. It is a platinum card. Try it again." "I have tried it 3 times, madam," the waiter said. "The code is do not honor. That means the bank has flagged the account. Do you have another form of payment?" Lucille's face went pale. She snatched the card back. She dug into her purse and pulled out her Visa, her backup card, the one she used for emergencies. "Try this one," she snapped, "and check your machine. It is clearly broken." The waiter took the Visa. He walked back to the terminal. The family watched him like hawks. Beep. Declined. Damon stood up. "This is ridiculous," he said. His voice was too loud. "Here, use mine." He threw his gold card on the table. It slid across the cloth and hit the wine glass. "I pay for everything anyway," he lied. "Just run it." The waiter took Damon's card. By now the manager had come over to the station. He was whispering to the waiter. He looked at the table with narrow, suspicious eyes. Beep. The waiter returned. The manager followed him. "Sir," the manager said, "this card is also declined. In fact, it has been marked as reported lost or stolen." "Stolen!" Damon shouted. "I am standing right here. It is my card." "Sir, we cannot accept these cards," the manager said, his voice turning icy. "The bill is $4,200. We need a valid form of payment immediately or we will have to involve the authorities." Jasmine tried next. Her hands were shaking so hard she dropped her purse. Her card was pink and cute. It was declined before it even hit the bottom of the slot. They sat there frozen. They realized the truth. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a broken machine. It was a blackout. I had cut the power lines. Hunter, the financial genius, was sitting very still. He had not offered his card. He was staring at his phone. His face was the color of dirty snow. While Lucille and Damon were arguing with the restaurant manager, Hunter was looking at a notification that had just popped up on his screen. It was from the brokerage app, the app where he played with stocks using My Capital, the app where he leveraged millions of dollars in margin debt thinking he was a wolf of Wall Street. The screen was flashing red. A single banner notification stretched across the top. Margin call alert, account liquidation imminent. Hunter tapped the screen with a trembling finger. He opened the details. The message was brutal in its simplicity. The primary collateral for this account has been withdrawn by the guarantor Caleb Moss. Your current positions are unhedged. You have a negative balance of $200,000. Immediate deposit required. Hunter felt the room spin. He wasn't just broke, he was in debt. Massive, crushing debt. He had borrowed money against my assets to make risky bets. Now the assets were gone, but the bets remained. And the house always wins. Hunter, Lucille said, shaking his arm. "Hunter, give them your card. We have to leave. People are staring." Hunter looked up at her. His eyes were hollow. "I can't," he whispered. "What do you mean you can't?" Lucille hissed. "Give them the corporate card, the one Caleb gave you for business expenses." "It is gone," Hunter said. His voice was a dry croak. "It is all gone, Mom. The investment account, the trading portfolio." He pulled the collateral. "What does that mean?" Courtney asked. She looked from her husband to the angry manager. "What does collateral mean?" "It means we are broke," Hunter said. He dropped his phone on the table. "It means we don't have enough money to pay for this salad, let alone the steak." The manager signaled to the security guard at the door. "I am calling the police," the manager said. Theft of services is a serious crime. Lucille looked at the half-eaten lobster. She looked at the empty wine bottle. For the first time in her life, she felt true fear. Not the fear of a broken nail or a bad haircut, the fear of consequences. "Run," Damon whispered. "What?" Courtney asked. "Run," Damon yelled. He kicked his chair back. It crashed into the table behind him. Pandemonium erupted. Damon bolted for the door. Hunter grabbed Courtney's hand and dragged her toward the exit. Lucille tried to run in her heels, but she slipped on the polished floor. She went down hard. The waiters lunged. The security guard blocked the door. It was a scene of absolute chaos. The elegant dinner had turned into a brawl, and I was sitting in my hotel room miles away watching the transaction alerts on my phone. Transaction declined Le Jardin. Amount $4,200. Transaction declined Le Jardin. Amount $4,200. I took a sip of my own wine. It was a cheap bottle from the minibar, but it tasted like victory. They were about to learn that when you bite the hand that feeds you, eventually, you starve. Desperation has a distinct smell. It smells like stale coffee and fear. After the humiliation at the restaurant, my family did not go to a shelter. They went to a 24-hour diner on the edge of town. It was the kind of place with sticky tables and flickering fluorescent lights. They huddled in a booth designed for 4 people, even though there were 5 of them. They nursed cups of cheap coffee because it was the only thing they could afford with the cash Hunter had found in his glove compartment. I know this because the private investigator I hired was sitting 2 booths away recording every word. Hunter was the architect of their next move. He was sweating. His expensive linen shirt was stained and wrinkled. He looked at Lucille, who was staring into her black coffee as if it were a crystal ball. "Mom, listen to me," Hunter whispered, leaning across the table. "We are looking at this all wrong. We are acting like victims. We need to act like concerned guardians." "What are you talking about?" Lucille snapped. "We are homeless, Hunter. We are broke." "Exactly," Hunter said. "And why are we broke? Because Caleb is sick. He had a massive stroke. The lack of oxygen to his brain caused significant cognitive damage. He is paranoid. He is irrational. He is spending millions of dollars in a manic episode." Lucille looked up. Her eyes narrowed. She was beginning to understand. "He is not in his right mind," Hunter continued, pressing his advantage. "If he were sane, would he kick his own family out? Would he sell the furniture? Would he humiliate us in public? No. These are the actions of a man suffering from dementia." "So what do we do?" Courtney asked. "We file for an emergency conservatorship," Hunter said. "We go to a judge first thing in the morning. We tell the court that Caleb Moss is a danger to himself and his estate. We ask for immediate temporary control of his finances to stop the bleeding, but he seemed fine at the hotel," Damon argued. "He spoke clearly." "That is just a facade," Hunter said. "It is part of the mania. We tell the judge he is masking his symptoms. Once we get the conservatorship, we can freeze his actions. We can unlock the accounts. We can move back into the house. We can force him into a facility where he can get the help he needs." "The help he needs," Lucille repeated slowly. A cruel smile began to form on her lips. "Yes, he needs help. A lot of help. A long stay in a secure facility where he cannot hurt anyone, especially our bank accounts." "But we need proof," Courtney said. "You cannot just tell a judge someone is crazy. You need a doctor." Hunter smiled. It was the smile of a shark sensing blood in the water. "I know a guy," Hunter said. "Dr. Thorne. He lost his license to practice at the city hospital a few years ago due to some billing irregularities, but he still runs a private clinic. He owes me a favor. Or rather, he owes the bookie I use a lot of money. If we pay his debt, he will sign anything we want." "But we don't have money to pay his debt," Damon pointed out. Hunter looked at Lucille's hand. Specifically, he looked at her ring finger. "We don't have cash," Hunter said, "but we have assets. Mom, that diamond ring is worth $50,000. Lucille clutched her hand to her chest. "No," she gasped. "This is my wedding ring. It is the last thing I have." "You want the ring, or you want the fortune?" Hunter asked coldly. "Caleb is burning through the trust fund every hour we sit here. Give up the ring and we get everything back. Keep the ring and we are sleeping on the street tonight." Lucille looked at the diamond. It was a symbol of the marriage she had just destroyed. She looked at her children, who were looking at her with hungry eyes. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she slid the ring off. "Make sure the doctor writes that Caleb is completely incapacitated," Lucille hissed. I want him locked away forever. Dr. Eris Thorne operated out of a medical building that should have been condemned a decade ago. The waiting room smelled of dust and desperation. The carpet was stained and the magazines on the table were 3 years old. This was where my family went to buy their salvation. My investigator watched from the parking lot as they walked in. Lucille was holding her hand awkwardly, trying to hide the pale band of skin where her ring used to be. They found Dr. Thorne in his office. He was a small man with nervous eyes and shaking hands. He looked like a man who was always looking over his shoulder. Hunter placed the diamond ring on the desk. The stone caught the light from the desk lamp and threw rainbows across the dirty walls. "This is a 3-carat flawless diamond," Hunter said. "It is yours, in exchange for a signature." Dr. Thorne picked up the ring. He examined it with a jeweler's loupe he pulled from his drawer. He did not ask about my health. He did not ask to see my medical records. He only cared about the carbon rock in his hand. "What do you need me to certify?" Dr. Thorne asked, his voice raspy. "We need an affidavit of medical incompetency," Hunter said, sliding a prepared document across the desk. "It states that you have examined Caleb Moss within the last 24 hours. It states that he has suffered severe frontal lobe damage resulting in paranoia, severe memory loss, and financial recklessness. It recommends immediate custodial care." Dr. Thorne read the paper. He paused. "I haven't seen Mr. Moss in 5 years," he said. "If the medical board finds out I signed this without an exam, I will go to prison. If you don't sign it," Hunter said, leaning in close, "your bookie is going to break your legs tomorrow. I know about the debt, Eris. This ring clears it." The doctor looked at the ring. He looked at the document. He looked at the door as if expecting the police to burst in. Greed and fear fought a war on his face. Fear won, but not the fear of the law, the fear of the debt. He picked up his pen. "Date it for yesterday," Lucille instructed, "before he kicked us out." Dr. Thorne scribbled his signature. He stamped it with his official medical seal. In that moment, he did not just commit malpractice. He committed a felony, and he dragged my entire family into a conspiracy to commit fraud. Hunter snatched the paper up before the ink was dry. "Pleasure doing business with you, Doc," Hunter said. They walked out of the clinic feeling invincible. They had the golden ticket. They had the medical proof that I was insane. They went straight to the courthouse. They filed the emergency petition ex parte, meaning they did not have to tell me they were doing it. They stood before a judge and lied. They swore under oath that I was a danger to myself. The judge, looking at the sworn statement of a licensed physician, granted the temporary order. They thought they had won. They thought they had checkmated the king. They did not know that the king had been watching the whole board from the beginning. I was sitting in the presidential suite of the Grand Meridian, enjoying a breakfast of smoked salmon and eggs Benedict. Sarah Goldberg was sitting opposite me, reviewing documents on her tablet. The view from the window was spectacular, but I was focused on the door. I knew they were coming. My investigator had texted me the moment the judge signed the order. There was a heavy knock at the door. "It's showtime," Sarah said, closing her tablet. She did not look worried. She looked like a cat watching a mouse run into a trap. I opened the door. 2 uniformed police officers stood there. Behind them was a man in a cheap suit holding a stack of papers. And behind him, hiding near the elevator, was my family. They were trying to look solemn, but I could see the smirks on their faces. Courtney was filming again. "Mr. Caleb Moss," the process server asked. "I am Caleb Moss," I said. "Sir, I am serving you with a court order for emergency conservatorship," the man said, handing me the thick packet. "By order of the court, your assets are hereby frozen. Your wife, Lucille Moss, has been appointed your temporary guardian. You are required to accompany these officers to the St. Jude Evaluation Center for processing." Lucille stepped forward. Her smirk was gone, replaced by a mask of fake concern. "It is for your own good, Caleb," she said. "You are not well. We are just trying to protect you." I took the papers. I did not read them. I handed them directly to Sarah, who had stepped up beside me. "Officers," I said, addressing the policeman. "Before you enforce this order, I believe my attorney has something to show you." Sarah stepped forward. She held up a file folder. "Officers, this is a sworn affidavit from Dr. Thorne signed 10 minutes ago," she said. The police paused, but that wasn't what she showed them. She pulled out a photograph. It was a high-resolution photo taken by my investigator. It showed Dr. Thorne in his office, holding Lucille's diamond ring while Hunter pointed to the document. And this, Sarah continued, is a time-stamped video of Dr. Thorne admitting to his nurse that he hasn't seen Caleb Moss in 5 years and that he only signed the paper to pay off a gambling debt. The officers looked at the photo. They looked at Lucille. Her face went from triumphant to terrified in a single second. "This order was obtained through perjury, fraud, and bribery," Sarah said, her voice cutting like a knife. "Mrs. Moss and her children just committed a felony in front of a judge." Hunter turned to run toward the elevator. "Officer, arrest that man," Sarah commanded, pointing at Hunter. The police officer put his hand on his holster. He looked at the process server. "This order is invalid based on probable cause of fraud," the officer said. Lucille gasped. No. The doctor said he was sick." "You are the one who is sick, Lucille," I said, stepping into the hallway. "You are sick with greed, and I think you just prescribed yourself a prison sentence." The officers moved past me. They were not there to take me to a mental hospital. They were walking towards my family. The trap had snapped shut, and they were the ones caught in the steel jaws. The courtroom smelled of old wood and floor wax. It was a cold, sterile place where lives were dismantled and put back together by the bang of a gavel. I sat at the defendant's table next to Sarah Goldberg. I was wearing my navy suit. My posture was straight. I did not look like a man losing his mind. I looked like a man waiting for a bus. On the other side of the aisle sat my family. They were dressed in somber colors. Lucille was wearing a black dress as if she were already a widow. She had a handkerchief in her hand which she used to dab at dry eyes every time the judge looked her way. Hunter sat next to her, whispering in her ear like a devil on her shoulder. The judge was an older man with thick glasses and a face carved from granite. His name was Judge Harrison, and he had a reputation for zero tolerance when it came to wasting his time. He looked over his glasses at the packed courtroom. "This is an emergency hearing for the conservatorship of Mr. Caleb Moss," the judge said. His voice boomed without a microphone. "Proceed." The lawyer my family had hired stood up. He was a slick man with a shiny suit and a smile that looked painted on. "Your Honor," he began, walking toward the bench. "We are here today because of a tragedy. Mr. Caleb Moss, a beloved father and husband, suffered a massive stroke 6 days ago. This medical event has left him with severe cognitive deficits. He is paranoid. He is irrational. And most dangerously, he is spending his life savings with a recklessness that threatens the future of his entire family." Lucille let out a small, perfectly timed sob. The lawyer gestured to her. "Look at this woman, Your Honor. Lucille Moss has stood by this man for 35 years. She has cooked his meals. She has raised his children. She has been his rock. And how does he repay her? By throwing her out of her own home. By selling the furniture she cherishes. By humiliating her in public hotels. These are not the actions of a sane man. These are the actions of a damaged brain. We have submitted a sworn affidavit from Dr. Eris Thorne attesting to Mr. Moss's incapacity. We ask the court to step in and save Mr. Moss from himself before he ends up destitute." Lucille took the stand. She walked slowly as if the weight of her grief was too heavy to bear. She sat down and looked at the jury box even though there was no jury. She was performing for the audience. "Mrs. Moss, can you tell the court what happened when you returned from your trip?" the lawyer asked. Lucille took a shaky breath. "We came home to an empty house. He had sold everything, even the photos of our children. I tried to talk to him. I tried to hug him, but he looked at me with dead eyes. He didn't know who I was. He thought I was a thief. It broke my heart, Your Honor. I just want to take care of him. I want to bring him home and hire nurses and make sure he is safe. I don't care about the money. I only care about my husband." She buried her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook. It was a masterpiece of acting. If I didn't know her, I might have believed her. The courtroom was silent. People were looking at me with pity. They saw a confused old man and a loving wife trying to rescue him. Hunter was smirking behind his hand. He thought it was over. He thought the narrative was set. Sarah Goldberg did not cross-examine Lucille. She did not ask about the furniture or the hotel. She simply stood up and smoothed her skirt. She walked to the center of the room. She held a small USB drive in her hand. "Your Honor," Sarah said. Her voice was calm and clear. "We do not dispute that Mr. Moss had a stroke. We do not dispute that he sold the furniture. We dispute the motivation. The petitioners claim these are the actions of a madman. We claim these are the actions of a man who woke up." "Objection!" the opposing lawyer shouted. Counsel is testifying. I am offering context, Sarah said. The petitioners claim Mrs. Moss is a devoted wife who rushes to her husband's side. They claim she only cares about his health. We would like to play a piece of evidence that contradicts that characterization. This is a recording of the phone call made by the paramedics from the scene of Mr. Moss's stroke 6 days ago. The judge nodded. Play it. Sarah plugged the drive into the court's audio system. A static hiss filled the room. Then the voice of the paramedic rang out loud and urgent. Mrs. Moss, this is EMT Rodriguez. Your husband has collapsed. It appears to be a massive stroke. He could die tonight. Then came the voice that froze the blood in everyone's veins. It was Lucille's voice, but it wasn't the soft, trembling voice she used on the witness stand. It was the sharp, annoyed voice of a woman inconvenienced. We can't. We are at the airport. We are boarding our flight to Miami in 10 minutes to catch the Royal Caribbean cruise. The tickets are non-refundable. The courtroom gasped. It was a collective sound of shock. Lucille stopped crying. Her head snapped up. Her eyes went wide. The recording continued. Ma'am, your husband could die. Look, tell him to calm down. We will call when we dock in 2 days. I am his wife. I am making an executive decision. We have a vacation. The audio cut off. The silence that followed was different from before. It was not respectful. It was heavy with judgment. Every pair of eyes in the room turned to Lucille. She looked like a deer caught in the headlights of a semi-truck. She tried to speak, but no words came out. Sarah pulled the drive out. Your Honor, Sarah said, turning to the judge, the petitioner claims she wants to protect Mr. Moss, but when told he was dying, she chose a buffet over his bedside. Mr. Moss is not insane. He is heartbroken, and he is angry, and under the law, anger is not grounds for a conservatorship. Judge Harrison took off his glasses. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. He looked at Lucille with an expression of pure disgust. It was the look a parent gives a child who has done something unforgivable, Mrs. Moss, the judge said. His voice was low and dangerous. I can explain, Lucille stammered, standing up. I was in shock. I didn't understand the severity. Sit down, the judge barked. The sound cracked like a whip. Lucille collapsed back into her chair. I have sat on this bench for 20 years, the judge said. I have seen murderers. I have seen thieves. I have seen people do terrible things to each other. But I have rarely seen such cold-blooded callousness from a spouse. You left a dying man on the floor of a pharmacy because you didn't want to lose your deposit. He turned to the opposing lawyer. And you, counsel, you brought this petition before me based on the testimony of a woman who abandoned her husband. You wasted the court's time. You insulted this man's dignity. The judge turned his eyes to me. For the first time, his face softened. Mr. Moss, he said, you appear to be lucid. You appear to be articulate. You appear to be a man who has made a decision to protect his assets from predators. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, I said, standing up. I am perfectly sane. I just realized that I was financing my own abuse. The judge nodded. He picked up his gavel. It looked like a weapon in his hand. The petition for conservatorship is denied with prejudice, the judge ruled. That means you cannot file it again. Furthermore, I am referring the affidavit of Dr. Thorne to the State Medical Board for investigation into fraud. And Mrs. Moss, if you ever step foot in my courtroom again with a frivolous lawsuit, I will hold you in contempt so fast your head will spin. He slammed the gavel down. Bang! The sound signaled the end of their legal war. Case dismissed, the judge said. The courtroom erupted into whispers. Lucille sat frozen in the witness box. Her face was gray. Her plan had backfired spectacularly. Not only did she lose control of the money, she had exposed her true nature to the world. Hunter had his head in his hands. He knew what was coming. The medical board investigation meant Dr. Thorne would talk, and when Dr. Thorne talked, he would tell them about the bribe. Hunter was not just looking at poverty. He was looking at prison. I walked past their table on my way out. I did not stop. I did not gloat. I simply adjusted my cuffs and walked toward the heavy wooden doors. Sarah walked beside me, a small smile playing on her lips. That went well, she whispered. It is not over yet, I said. They still have hope. They think I might forgive them if they beg hard enough. I pushed the doors open. The sunlight outside was blinding. Time to take away the hope, I said. The victory in the courtroom was satisfying, but it was not enough. I did not just want to defeat them legally. I wanted to destroy the alliance that held them together. They were united by greed, so I knew that greed was the only weapon that could tear them apart. I sat in the high back leather chair of the hotel suite. The city lights twinkled below me like diamonds, but my focus was on the phone in my hand. Sarah Goldberg stood by the window swirling a glass of sparkling water. She looked skeptical. "Are you sure you want to let them back in?" she asked. "You just spent $10,000 on legal fees to keep them away." "I am not letting them in." "Sarah," I said, "I am inviting them into a cage match. Watch." I cleared my throat. I closed my eyes and summoned every ounce of weakness I could muster. I needed to sound like the broken, confused old man they claimed I was. I dialed Lucille's number. I put it on speaker so Sarah could hear. It rang once. "What do you want?" Caleb Lucille snapped. Her voice was harsh. She was probably sitting in a cheap motel room contemplating her ruined reputation. "Lucille," I said. My voice trembled. I made it sound thin and reedy. "Lucille, I am so confused." There was silence on the line. Then a shift. "Confused?" she asked. Her tone softened instantly. "What do you mean, honey?" "I am sitting here alone," I said, letting out a long sigh. "The judge said I am fine, but I don't feel fine. I feel lost. I keep looking at these bank statements Sarah gave me. There is an account here I forgot about, the Emergency Reserve Trust." I heard a gasp. I heard movement in the background. I imagined Hunter and Damon leaning in closer to the phone. "What reserve trust?" Caleb Lucille asked. Her voice was now dripping with honey. "It has $5 million in it," I said. I paused to let that number sink in. $5 million. "I don't know what to do with it, Lucille. I am old. I am sick." "Maybe you were right. Maybe I need help. I need to assign a beneficiary for this fund before I get worse. But I don't know who to trust." "You can trust me, Caleb," Lucille said quickly. "I am your wife." "I don't know," I whispered. "The court case, it hurt me, Lucille. I need someone who truly cares. Someone who will take care of me, not just the money. I am going to rest now. I just wanted to hear your voice." I hung up. I looked at Sarah. She was smiling. $5 million, she said. "That is a cruel lie, Caleb." "It is not a lie," I said, pouring myself a drink. "I do have $5 million. I just didn't tell them it is already donated to the Stroke Foundation. Now we wait." We did not have to wait long. It took exactly 45 minutes for the transformation to occur. My investigator sent me updates from the field. He told me that the moment I hung up the phone, the atmosphere in their motel room changed from a funeral to a war room. They stopped mourning their loss and started calculating their potential gain. $5 million was enough to solve all their problems. It was enough to pay the debts. It was enough to buy a new house. But there was a catch. I had said I needed someone to trust, singular, not plural. This was the genius of the trap. They knew the money would not be split. The winner would take all. Suddenly, Courtney, who had been complaining about her broken nail for 3 days, was running to the grocery store. She used the last of her cash to buy organic chicken, carrots, and celery. She was going to make soup. Courtney, who had never cooked a meal in her life, was going to play the role of the domestic goddess. Damon ran to a pharmacy. He bought vitamins. He bought specialized memory supplements. He bought a blood pressure monitor. He was going to play the role of the concerned medical advocate. Hunter was on his laptop, not looking for a job, but researching how to reverse a conservatorship and tax implications of trust funds. He was preparing to be the financial savior. They arrived at the Grand Meridian an hour later. They did not storm the lobby this time. They approached the front desk with humility. They told the manager they were there to visit their beloved father, who had reached out to them in his time of need. I had left instructions to let them up. When I opened the door to the suite, I was greeted by a wall of flowers and fake smiles. "Dad," Damon said, pushing past Lucille. He was holding a bag of vitamins like it was gold. "I brought you these. They are top of the line. I did some research, and these are the best for stroke recovery. I just want you to be healthy." "Move," Damon, Courtney said, shoving him aside with her hip. She was holding a thermos. "Dad, I made you soup. It is homemade. I spent all afternoon in the kitchen just thinking about you. You need nourishment." "Caleb, darling," Lucille said, opening her arms. She was wearing the only clean dress she had left. She had reapplied her lipstick. "I am so sorry about the court case. We were just so worried. We made a mistake. Please forgive us. We are a family." I let them in. I leaned heavily on my cane, pretending to be frail. "Thank you," I said softly. "I am just so tired." Come sit down, Hunter said, guiding me to the sofa. He fluffed a pillow behind my back. Can I get you anything? Water, tea, a checkbook to sign. He caught himself, but I saw the hunger in his eyes. Just sit with me, I said. I missed you all. They sat around me in a semicircle. They looked like vultures waiting for the wounded animal to die. But these vultures were also watching each other. I could feel the tension radiating off them. Every time Damon spoke, Courtney would roll her eyes. Every time Lucille touched my hand, Hunter would clear his throat. I looked at the soup Courtney had brought. It smells delicious, I said. It is my grandmother's recipe. Courtney lied. She didn't have a recipe. She bought it from the deli counter and put it in a thermos. I know because the sticker was still on the bottom. You know, Caleb, Lucille said, stroking my arm. I was thinking, you shouldn't be alone here. It is dangerous. Maybe I should move in here with you, just for a few days, to help you manage things, especially that trust fund you mentioned. It sounds complicated. Damon cut in instantly. Mom, you are tired too. You are stressed. Dad needs someone with energy. I can stay here. I can sleep on the couch. We can watch football like we used to, Dad. Remember, I don't think Dad needs noise, Damon Courtney said sweetly. He needs peace. I can stay. I can cook. I can make sure he takes his medicine. They started arguing. It was low and polite at first, but the volume was rising. I am his wife, Lucille hissed. I am his son, Damon shot back. I am the only one who knows how to cook, Courtney said. I sat back and watched. I took a sip of the water Hunter had poured for me. It was working. The illusion of the $5 million had turned them into enemies. They were no longer a united front against me. They were gladiators fighting for the Emperor's favor. I coughed, a weak, dry cough. They all froze and looked at me. I am just so overwhelmed, I said. I need to rest. Maybe you can take turns. Show me who really cares. I saw the spark in their eyes. A challenge, a competition. I will take the first shift, Lucille announced. No, Mom, Damon said, standing up. You need your beauty sleep. I will stay tonight. I excused myself to go to the bathroom. Inside, I turned on the tap to mask the sound of my voice. I looked in the mirror. I did not look frail. I looked dangerous. I pulled out my phone and texted Sarah. Phase 2 complete. They are inside, and they hate each other. When I came back out, the atmosphere had shifted from polite to poisonous. Courtney was sitting in the corner texting furiously. Damon was standing by the window looking at Hunter with suspicion. Lucille was pacing. Damon leaned in close to me while Lucille was in the bathroom. Dad, he whispered. I didn't want to tell you this, but I think Mom is seeing someone. That pastor from the church. I think she is using your money to buy him gifts. I feigned shock. No, not your mother. I saw the receipts, Damon lied. Or maybe he wasn't lying. Maybe he was just using the truth as a weapon. Be careful, Dad. She just wants the trust fund. 10 minutes later, Hunter cornered me while Damon was getting ice. Caleb, he said, his voice low. You know Damon has a gambling problem, right? If you give him access to that fund, he will lose it in Vegas in a week. He owes some bad people money. That is why he is here. He is desperate. I nodded slowly. Thank you for telling me, Hunter. Then Courtney. Dad, she whispered. Hunter and Jasmine are planning to buy a boat. They don't care about your health. They just want the cash. I am the only one who wants you to get better. It was beautiful. Within an hour, they had betrayed each other completely. Every secret they had kept as a family was now ammunition. They were handing me the knife and asking me to stab their siblings. I looked at the clock. It was time to escalate. I think I need to sleep now, I said. Leave me. Come back tomorrow. Whoever comes earliest, well, I will know they are the most dedicated. They practically ran to the door. They were already calculating the travel time. They were already planning how to sabotage the others' alarm clocks. Good night, Dad, Damon said. I love you. Good night, Caleb, Lucille said. Dream of me. They left. I locked the door. I walked over to the trash can and dumped Courtney's soup inside. I picked up the vitamins Damon bought and threw them in too. I sat down by the window and watched them exit the hotel. They were arguing on the sidewalk. I saw Lucille shoving Damon. I saw Courtney pointing a finger at Hunter. The pack had dissolved. Now they were just lone wolves starving in the winter. and tomorrow I was going to let them hunt each other to extinction. The hotel suite had transformed from a luxury accommodation into a battlefield. My children were no longer fighting me. They were fighting each other. I was just the prize at the end of the blood sport. The air was thick with tension and the smell of expensive perfume masking the scent of desperation. Jasmine arrived just before lunch. She was carrying a porcelain bowl covered with a silk napkin. She looked like a saint from a Renaissance painting, but I knew she was just a shark in designer heels. "Daddy," she cooed, placing the bowl on the table. "I made you my special organic bone broth. It has turmeric and ginger. It will heal your brain and give you strength. I spent 6 hours simmering it." She glared at Courtney, who was sitting on the sofa pretending to read a magazine. Courtney had been here since dawn, trying to curry favor by fluffing my pillows every 10 minutes. I saw the look in Courtney's eyes. It was pure malice. "I need to use the restroom," Jasmine said, smoothing her dress. "Don't eat until I get back, Daddy. I want to feed you myself." She walked away, leaving the steaming bowl on the table. This was the moment. I closed my eyes and pretended to doze off. I watched through the slit of my eyelids. Courtney moved with the speed of a viper. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small plastic bottle. It was a powerful laxative concentrate, the kind used for preparing patients for colon surgery. She uncapped it and poured the entire contents into Jasmine's soup. She stirred it quickly with a spoon and wiped the rim. She sat back down and flipped a page of her magazine just as the toilet flushed. Jasmine returned beaming. She picked up the bowl. "Here, Daddy," she said, holding the spoon to my lips. "Open wide." I looked at the spoon. I looked at Courtney, who was watching with a small, tight smile. I looked at Jasmine. "I am not hungry," I said, turning my head away. "Daddy, please," Jasmine whined. "I worked so hard. Just one taste. Do it for me." I looked her in the eye. "How do I know it is safe?" I asked. My voice was shaky, but my intent was clear. "I am a rich man, Jasmine. A rich man. People want me dead." Jasmine looked offended. "Daddy, I am your daughter. I would never hurt you." "Then prove it," I said. "Eat it." "What?" she asked. "Eat the soup," I said. "If it is safe, show me. Eat the whole bowl. Then I will know I can trust you." Jasmine looked at the bowl. She looked at me. She wanted that $5 million. She wanted to prove she was the golden child. "Fine," she said indignantly. "I will eat it. And then you will apologize for being so paranoid." She ate. She ate with gusto, glaring at me the whole time. Courtney had to cover her mouth to hide her laughter. Jasmine finished the last drop. "See?" she said, slamming the bowl down. "Delicious. And I am perfectly fine." The reaction was not immediate, but it was fast. 5 minutes later, Jasmine's face changed color. It went from rosy to green. A bead of sweat rolled down her forehead. Her stomach let out a gurgle that sounded like a dying engine. "Are you okay, honey?" Courtney asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. "You look a little pale." "I am fine," Jasmine grit out, clenching her stomach. I need to go." She stood up, but her legs buckled. The chemicals were working their violent magic. She clamped a hand over her mouth and ran for the bathroom. She didn't make it. The sound of her humiliation echoed through the suite. It was a disaster. A messy, smelly, undignified disaster. Jasmine fled the hotel in tears, leaving her expensive shoes behind. Courtney laughed until she cried. I watched it all. I did not laugh. I felt a cold sadness. This was what my family had become. Poisoners and saboteurs. Night fell. The suite was quiet, but the war was not over. I had set the stage for the main event. Before I went to bed, I took my wallet out of my pocket. It was thick with cash and credit cards. I left it on the console table near the door. It was bait. I went into my bedroom and locked the door, but I did not sleep. I turned on the monitor for the hidden camera I had installed in the living room. At 2 a.m, the door to the suite opened quietly. It was Hunter. He had a key card that Lucille had stolen for him. He crept into the room. He was wearing black like a cat burglar. He moved toward the console table. He saw the wallet. His eyes lit up. He didn't want the cash. He wanted the black card. He wanted the account numbers. He reached for it. Suddenly, the bathroom door flew open. Damon lunged out of the darkness. He had been hiding in the bathtub waiting. "Put it down," Damon hissed. Hunter jumped, dropping the wallet. Shh, Hunter whispered. You will wake him up. Go back to sleep, Damon. I am just checking his ID. Liar, Damon spat. You are stealing the cards. You want to drain the account before I get access. We are partners, remember? Hunter said, holding up his hands. We split it 50-50. I don't trust you, Damon said. He stepped forward and shoved Hunter. You lost all our money on the stock market. You are a loser, Hunter. Hunter's face twisted in rage. He tackled Damon. They hit the floor with a thud. It was not a cinematic fight. It was pathetic. Two grown men rolling on the Persian carpet, scratching and clawing at each other. Give it to me, Hunter grunted, trying to reach the wallet. No, Damon yelled, pulling Hunter's hair. It is mine. I am the son. You are just the son-in-law. You are nothing. Hunter punched Damon in the ribs. Damon bit Hunter's arm. They knocked over a vase. They ripped each other's shirts. They were panting and cursing, whispering insults so they wouldn't wake the man they were trying to rob. I watched on the monitor. I sipped my tea. I saw the animalistic greed in their eyes. They looked like starving dogs fighting over a bone. They didn't care about me. They didn't care about dignity. They only cared about the leather square lying on the floor. Finally, Damon kicked Hunter in the face. Hunter rolled away, clutching his nose. Blood trickled between his fingers. Damon grabbed the wallet. Get out! Damon whispered breathlessly. Get out before I kill you. Hunter scrambled to his feet. He looked at Damon with pure hatred. You will regret this, he hissed. I will tell him about your gambling debt. I will tell him everything. He ran out the door. Damon stood there, clutching the wallet to his chest. He opened it. He pulled out the black card. He kissed it. I smiled in the darkness of my bedroom. Kiss it while you can, son, because that card is already canceled, and the camera above your head just recorded your grand larceny. The next morning I sat in the living room. The vase was broken. The rug was rumpled. But I pretended not to notice. I sat with my iPad. Sarah Goldberg sat next to me. Did you get it? She asked. I tapped the screen. I opened the folder marked Evidence. There were 2 files. One named The Soup. One named The Fight. I played the video of the fight. I paused it at the moment Damon bit Hunter's arm. I zoomed in on their faces. The distortion of greed made them look like monsters. I have enough, I said. This is the nail in the coffin, Sarah said. If we show this to the police, they go to jail for assault and attempted theft. Not yet, I said, closing the iPad. Jail is too easy. I want them to experience the hope one last time. I want them to think they won. I stood up and walked to the window. The city looked clean and bright in the morning sun. It is time for the finale, Sarah. Send the invitations. Tell them I have made my decision. Tell them the check is written. Tell them to wear their best clothes. Sarah stood up. Where are we holding the ceremony, she asked. I turned to her. My face was stone. At the house, I said. The empty house. Let's bring them back to the scene of the crime. Let's end it where it began. Sarah Goldberg arrived at the suite while the morning sun was still hitting the high-rise windows. She did not look happy. She looked like a surgeon who had just opened a patient and found something inoperable. My children were gone. They were out in the city preparing for the final showdown that evening, believing they were fighting for a $5 million prize. They did not know that the prize had already been donated and the game was rigged. Sarah placed a thick manila folder on the coffee table. It landed with a heavy thud. You asked me to look into Lucille's spending habits, Sarah said. You wanted to know why she needed so much cash over the years. You thought she was buying jewelry or hiding money in a secret account for the family. I nodded. I assumed Lucille was hoarding cash. It was in her nature to be a squirrel preparing for winter. I was wrong, Sarah said. She wasn't saving it, Caleb. She was spending it. But not on clothes, and not on herself. She opened the file. It was a spreadsheet of bank transfers going back 10 years. Thousands of small withdrawals, $500 here, $500, $1,000 there. All of them labeled under vague categories like church donation or charity gala or benevolence fund. I looked at the total at the bottom of the page, $300,000. She gave $300,000 to the church I asked. I felt a strange pang of pride. At least she was doing something good with my money. Sarah shook her head. She pulled out a second document. It was a corporate registration for a limited liability company called the Benevolence Fund. It is not a church charity, Caleb, Sarah said. It is a shell company. It is registered to a single individual, a man named Julian Thorne. The name sounded familiar. Then it clicked. Julian Thorne was the youth pastor at our church. He was 28 years old. He played the guitar. He had perfect teeth and hair that was always styled. He called Lucille's sister Moss and held her hand a little too long during prayer service. "He is the pastor," I said. "Why is she sending him money?" "Turn the page," Sarah said softly. I turned the page. It was a copy of a vehicle registration. A brand new red convertible. Registered to Julian Thorne. Paid for by a cashier's check from the joint account of Caleb and Lucille Moss. "She bought him a car," I whispered. "She bought him a life," Sarah corrected. "She pays his rent. She pays his gym membership. She pays for his vacations to Cabo. Caleb, your wife, has been keeping a boyfriend on your payroll for a decade. She isn't just a hypocrite. She is an adulteress who used your sweat and blood to buy the affection of a man younger than her own son." I felt a coldness spread through my chest. It wasn't heartbreak. My heart had broken days ago on the pharmacy floor. This was disgust. Pure, oily disgust. The woman who quoted scripture at the dinner table, the woman who judged me for working on Sundays. She was stealing from our retirement to play sugar mama to a boy who was likely laughing at her behind her back. I closed the file. The anger was gone. In its place was a clarity so sharp it cut like a razor. "Call her," I said. "Tell her I want to see her, alone. Tell her I have made a decision about the trust fund, and I want to sign the papers with her before the children arrive tonight." Sarah nodded. She understood. This wasn't a negotiation. It was an execution. Lucille arrived at noon. She was wearing a white dress that made her look like a bride or a martyr. She had done her hair. She smelled of lavender and deception. She walked into the suite with a confidence that made my stomach turn. She thought she had won. She thought the competition with the children was over and she had emerged victorious. "Caleb, darling," she said, walking toward me with open arms. "I am so glad you called. I knew you would see reason. The children, they are sweet, but they are greedy. They don't love you like I do. We built this life together. We should end it together." She tried to kiss my cheek. I turned away and walked to the window. "Sit down, Lucille," I said. She sat on the sofa, arranging her skirt. She looked at the table. She saw the papers stacked there. She assumed they were the trust fund documents. Her eyes lit up with a hunger she couldn't hide. "Is that it?" she asked, pointing to the papers. "Is that the $5 million? I turned around. I leaned against the windowsill. "We will get to the money, Lucille," I said. "First, we need to talk about faith." "Faith?" she asked, blinking. "You are a religious woman, Lucille. You are always telling me about sin, about redemption, about the sanctity of marriage." "I am," she said, clutching her pearls. "I pray for you every day, Caleb, even when you are difficult." I walked over to the table. I picked up the manila folder. "I know you pray," I said. "I know you pray with Pastor Julian." Lucille froze. The color drained from her face so fast she looked like a corpse. "Julian," she stammered, he is a spiritual advisor. He helps me with my grief." "Is that what you call it?" I asked. "Grief counseling." I opened the folder. I didn't just show her the bank statements, I showed her the photos. My investigator had been thorough. There were photos of Lucille and Julian at a beach resort. There were photos of them in his new car. There were photos of them holding hands at a restaurant 3 towns over. Lucille stared at the photos. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. There was no denial possible. "The camera does not lie, Caleb," she whispered. "It didn't mean anything. He listened to me. You were always working. I was lonely. You were lonely, so you stole $300,000 from your family," I asked. "You were lonely, so you bought a 28-year-old man a sports car while your daughter was struggling to pay her rent." Lucille began to cry, but they were not the pretty tears she used in court. These were ugly, terrified tears. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of something else. "Please don't tell the church," she sobbed. "If the bishop sees this, if the ladies in the prayer group see this, I will be ruined. They will excommunicate me. I will be a pariah." I looked at her. I saw her vanity. It was her Achilles heel. She didn't care about being a bad wife. She cared about being seen as a bad Christian. I sat down opposite her. I pushed the photos aside and pulled a single document from the bottom of the stack. It was not a trust fund deed. It was a divorce settlement. "Here is the deal, Lucille," I said. My voice was flat and businesslike. "This is a divorce decree. It states that we are separating due to irreconcilable differences. It states that you waive all rights to my assets. You get no alimony, you get no house, you get no pension. You leave this marriage with exactly what you brought into it. Nothing. Lucille looked at the paper. Her hands were shaking violently. But I can't live on nothing, Caleb. I have expenses. If you sign this, I said, pointing to the line, I will burn these photos. I will destroy the bank records. Julian can keep his car. Your reputation at the church remains intact. You can walk away with your head high and tell everyone we just grew apart. And if I don't sign, she asked, her voice barely a whisper. If you don't sign, I said, I will email these photos to the entire congregation. I will send them to the bishop. I will send them to Julian's mother. And then I will prosecute you for embezzlement. You will go to prison, Lucille, and you will go to hell in the eyes of everyone you know. The silence in the room was deafening. I could hear the clock ticking. I could hear the traffic outside. Lucille looked at the photos. She looked at the divorce papers. She looked at the life of luxury she was losing. But she knew the game was over. She knew I held all the cards. She picked up the pen. She didn't look at me. She signed her name. Lucille Moss. The signature was shaky but legible. She pushed the paper back to me. Are you happy now? She whispered. I took the paper. I checked the signature. It was valid. I am not happy, Lucille, I said. I am relieved. Get out. She stood up. She grabbed her purse. She looked at the door. What about the dinner tonight? She asked. The children. They think they are getting the money. Come to the dinner, I said. We need witnesses. But remember, Lucille, you are not a beneficiary anymore. You are just a guest. And if you say one word about this meeting, I will upload the photos before dessert is served. She nodded. She walked to the door. She looked small and defeated. The grand matriarch of the Moss family was gone. All that was left was a lonely old woman with a dark secret. See you at dinner, I said. She left. I picked up the photos of her and the pastor. I walked to the trash can and dropped them in. I didn't need to burn them. I knew she would never cross me again. Fear is a much stronger lock than love ever was. I called Sarah. It is done, I said. The queen is off the board. Now let's deal with the pawns. The invitation said 7 o'clock, black tie optional. It was sent by courier to the cheap motel where my children were staying and to the small apartment Lucille had rented with the last of her cash. I held the event at the estate. I had hired a staging company to bring in furniture for one night only. I wanted the house to look exactly as it did before I stripped it bare. I wanted them to walk in and feel the false comfort of the past returning. I wanted them to believe that the nightmare was over and the dream was about to begin. My investigator told me about their preparations. It was pathetic and hilarious in equal measure. They did not have money for black tie attire. Hunter had to visit a pawn shop on the bad side of town. He traded his Rolex watch, the one I gave him for his 30th birthday. He sold it for a fraction of its value just to rent a tuxedo and get a haircut. He needed to look the part of the successful heir. He needed to look like a man who could manage $5 million. Damon took a different route. He visited a predatory lender, a place with neon signs and bulletproof glass. He borrowed $2,000 at an interest rate that should be illegal. He used it to buy a new suit and a pair of Italian leather shoes. He told the loan officer he would pay it back in 24 hours with a massive bonus. He was betting his life on a race that was already fixed. Courtney and Jasmine were no better. They went to a high-end department store and bought dresses on a credit card that was already over its limit. They convinced the clerk to override the decline by claiming it was a bank error and showing their driver's licenses with the Moss name. They planned to return the dresses the next morning with the tags still on. They were literally wearing borrowed time. They arrived in a rented limousine. It was white and gaudy. They stepped out onto the driveway looking like movie stars. But I could see the cracks in the facade. I saw the way Hunter tugged at his collar. I saw the way Courtney checked her reflection in the car window with manic intensity. They walked up the steps with their heads held high, but their eyes were darting around looking for traps. I met them at the door. I was wearing my own tuxedo. I stood tall. I did not need a cane tonight. "Welcome home," I said. Dad, Damon said, rushing forward to shake my hand. "You look great. You look strong. You look rich," Courtney whispered. She hugged me, and I could smell the return policy on her dress. They walked into the foyer. They gasped when they saw the furniture. The rugs were back. The paintings were back. The house looked warm and inviting. They thought I had bought it all back. They didn't know it was all rental props. "We have a wonderful dinner prepared," I said, leading them to the dining room. A private chef was in the kitchen. The table was set with crystal and silver. "Sit down, everyone. Tonight we celebrate the future." They sat down. Lucille took her seat at the far end of the table. She was pale. She drank her wine in one gulp and signaled the waiter for another. She knew what was coming. She looked at her children with a mixture of pity and fear, but she said nothing. She was protecting her own secret. Her silence was the price of her freedom. The dinner was elaborate: lobster bisque, filet mignon, truffle mashed potatoes. It was the kind of meal they felt they deserved. But nobody ate much. They were too nervous. They pushed the food around their plates. Their eyes kept flickering to me and then to the briefcase sitting by my feet. Damon cleared his throat. "Dad, this is amazing. It feels like old times." "It is better than old times," I said, raising my glass, "because now we have clarity." "Yes," Courtney said. "We learned so much this week, Dad. We learned that family is the most important thing." I smiled. It was a shark's smile. "I agree, Courtney. That is why I brought you here. Over the last few days, you have all shown me who you really are." Hunter straightened his tie. He thought I was talking about his financial advice. Damon puffed out his chest. He thought I was talking about his protection during the robbery attempt. Jasmine smiled weakly. She thought I believed her soup was an act of love. I stood up. I tapped my glass with a spoon. The sound rang out clear and sharp. "Attention, everyone," I said. The room went deadly silent. You could hear a pin drop on the carpet. "As you know, I have a trust fund containing $5 million in liquid assets." I began. "I have been wrestling with who should inherit this responsibility. I needed to know who truly had my best interests at heart." I looked at Hunter. "Hunter," I said, "you showed me that you are always thinking about numbers. You are always looking for the black card." Hunter nodded vigorously. "I am Dad. I just want to secure the legacy." I looked at Damon. "Damon, you showed me that you are willing to fight for what you believe is yours. You have a hunger that cannot be satisfied." Damon grinned. He looked at Hunter with triumph. I looked at Courtney and Jasmine. "And you two, you showed me that you are willing to go to great lengths to eliminate the competition. Your dedication to being the only one left standing is impressive." Courtney kicked Jasmine under the table. They both beamed at me. "And finally, Lucille," I said, looking at my wife. Lucille looked down at her plate. "You showed me that everything has a price," I said, "and that sometimes the smartest move is to fold your hand and walk away." The children looked confused. They didn't understand the comment, but they didn't care. They just wanted the name. So I continued. "I have made my decision. The papers are signed. The transfer is complete. The sole beneficiary of the Moss family trust is..." I paused. I let the silence stretch. I watched the sweat bead on Hunter's forehead. I watched Damon's hand grip the tablecloth until his knuckles turned white. I watched Courtney hold her breath. "Please turn your attention to the screen," I said, pointing to the white projection screen set up in the corner of the room. The lights dimmed. The projector hummed to life. They all turned. Their faces were full of hope. They were ready to see their own name. They were ready to jump up and scream and pop the champagne. A logo appeared on the screen. It was not a name. It was a graphic, a red heart with a jagged line running through it. Underneath the logo were the words, "The Caleb Moss Foundation for Abandoned Stroke Victims." There was a moment of absolute incomprehension. Their brains could not process what they were seeing. They squinted. They tilted their heads. Then the text below faded in. "Beneficiary, St. Jude Medical Research and Legal Aid for Elderly Abuse. Total donation. Amount $5 million. Status irrevocable." The silence broke. It didn't break with a cheer. It broke with a sound like air escaping a tire. "What is this?" Hunter whispered. He stood up slowly. His napkin fell to the floor. "It is the winner, Hunter," I said cheerfully. "Is this a joke?" Damon asked. His voice was rising. "Dad, tell me this is a joke. Tell me that is a placeholder for my name." "It is no joke," I said. I picked up the remote and clicked to the next slide. It was a photo of me signing the check. Sarah Goldberg was standing next to me smiling. The date on the check was yesterday. But we took care of you," Courtney stammered. "The soup, the vitamins. We came to the hotel." I looked at her cold and hard. You came to the hotel because you smelled money, Courtney. You didn't come to the hospital when I was dying. You went on a cruise. But you said you needed someone to trust. Jasmine wailed. I did, I replied. And I found them. I trust this charity. I trust them to use my money to help people whose families abandon them on pharmacy floors. I trust them to sue ungrateful children who try to steal from their parents. Lucille sat like a statue. She picked up her wine glass and drained it. She poured another. She was watching the destruction of her offspring with a detached, glassy stare. You can't do this, Hunter screamed. He slammed his fist on the table. The silver rattled. We have debts, Caleb. I borrowed money against this. I have people coming for me. I know, I said. I saw the margin call. Then help us, Damon shouted. He ran around the table and grabbed my lapels. You are my father. You have to help us. I owe a loan shark $2,000 by tomorrow. If I don't pay, he is going to break my legs. I gently removed his hands from my tuxedo. I suggest you start running Damon, I said. Or maybe you can sell that suit. It looks expensive. This is insane, Courtney shrieked. She grabbed a crystal wine glass and threw it against the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces. We are your family. You are supposed to provide for us. I did provide for you, I said. My voice dropped to a growl. I provided for 30 years. I gave you houses. I gave you cars. I gave you educations you didn't use. And in return, you gave me a stroke and a cruise itinerary. I pressed the button on the remote again. The screen changed. The logo disappeared. Now, I said, before you leave, there is one more presentation. A little home movie I made during your stay at the hotel. Hunter looked at the screen. His face went white. No, he whispered. Yes, I said. The video began to play. It was black and white night vision. It showed two men rolling on the floor. It showed Damon biting Hunter. It showed the theft of the wallet. And then the audio kicked in. You are a loser, Hunter. I am the sun. You are nothing. Damon froze. Hunter covered his face. I looked at my guests. Enjoy the dessert, I said. It is bitter chocolate, just like the taste of defeat. The room was silent, but the screen was not. The projector hummed with a low mechanical whir that sounded like a saw cutting through bone. The image on the wall was grainy and black and white, but the figures were unmistakable. It was the footage from the hidden camera in the hotel living room recorded at 3 a.m. the night before. Everyone at the table stared at the screen. They could not look away. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. On the screen, Hunter was creeping across the floor. He looked like a thief. He looked like a criminal. He reached for the wallet on the console table. Then Damon burst out of the darkness. The fight was pathetic. It was a brawl between two grown men who had never fought for anything honorable in their lives. They rolled on the floor. They scratched. They bit. Then the audio filled the room. It was amplified by the expensive sound system I had installed for this exact moment. You are a loser, Hunter. Damon's voice boomed from the speakers. I am the sun. You are just the son-in-law. You are nothing. Hunter closed his eyes. He slumped in his chair. He looked small. He looked defeated. But the video was not done. The scene changed. It cut to earlier that day. It showed Courtney sitting on the sofa while I was in the bathroom. She was on the phone. She thought she was alone. She thought she was safe. The audio was crisp and clear. I don't care if he dies, Courtney said into her phone. Her face on the screen was twisted with annoyance. In fact, it would be better if he hurried up. I am sick of bringing him soup. I am sick of pretending to care about his blood pressure. I just want the check so we can buy the beach house. He is a stubborn old goat, and he smells like a hospital. Courtney gasped. She covered her mouth with her hand. She looked around the table. Her eyes were wide with panic. The video continued. He thinks he is so smart, Courtney's voice sneered. But he is just a senile old man. Once we get the power of attorney, I am going to stick him in the cheapest home I can find. I am not changing his diapers. Let him rot. The screen went black. The lights in the dining room came back on slowly. The brightness felt harsh. It exposed every flaw. It exposed every lie. I stood at the head of the table. I looked at Courtney. She was trembling. Her face was a mask of horror. She wasn't sorry she said it. She was sorry she got caught. You said you loved me, Courtney, I said. My voice was calm. You said you were the only one who wanted me to recover. I didn't mean it, Courtney stammered. I was stressed. I was venting. It was taken out of context. Context, I asked. You called me a rotting old goat. You planned to put me in a cheap home. That seems like very clear context to me. I looked at Hunter. And you, Hunter. You tried to rob me while I slept. You tried to steal the identity of the man who paid for your wedding. Hunter didn't speak. He couldn't. He was staring at the empty space where his future used to be. But we are not the only ones watching this, I said. I gestured to the other tables in the room. In my anger, I had forgotten to introduce the other guests. Sitting in the shadows near the back were 3 men in suits. They had been silent observers. They had watched the dinner. They had watched the presentation. One of the men stood up. It was Mr. Sterling. He was the senior partner at the investment firm where Hunter worked. Or rather, where Hunter used to work. Hunter turned around and saw him. His jaw dropped. Mr. Sterling Hunter gasped. What are you doing here? I invited him, I said. I thought he should see how his junior associate handles risk management. Mr. Sterling walked over to the table. He did not look happy. He looked disgusted. Hunter, Mr. Sterling said. His voice was cold steel. We entrust you with millions of dollars of client money. We entrust you with sensitive data. Watching you try to steal a wallet from a sleeping man? Well, let's just say it violates our code of ethics. Mr. Sterling, please, Hunter begged, standing up. It was a misunderstanding. It was a family prank. You are fired, Hunter, Mr. Sterling said. Do not come to the office tomorrow. Security will mail you your personal effects. And given the margin call on your personal account, I expect our legal team will be in touch about the debt you owe the firm. Hunter collapsed back into his chair. He was done. His career was over. His reputation was incinerated. But Courtney was not looking at Mr. Sterling. She was looking at her phone. Her phone had been buzzing incessantly on the table. She picked it up. Her face went from pale to ghostly white. What is it, Courtney? I asked. Is it your fans? She looked up at me with terror in her eyes. You live-streamed it, she whispered. I didn't, I said. But the waiter did. I pointed to the young man standing in the corner holding a smartphone on a tripod. He was broadcasting to Courtney's own channel. I had hired a hacker to hijack her feed. Her followers had watched everything. They saw the video of her cursing me. They saw her admit to poisoning Jasmine. They saw the ugly truth beneath the filters. The comments were scrolling up the screen faster than she could read them. Monster. Gold digger. I hope you rot. Unfollowing. She had lost 10,000 followers in 5 minutes. Brands she worked with were already tagging her in posts canceling their sponsorships. Her entire digital empire built on lies and aesthetics was crumbling in real time. Make it stop, she screamed. She threw her phone across the room. It hit the wall and cracked. But the stream didn't stop. The camera in the corner kept rolling, capturing her meltdown. This is illegal, she shrieked. You are ruining my life. You ruined your own life, Courtney, I said. I just turned on the lights. Lucille finally spoke. She stood up. She was shaking. Caleb, please, she said. Stop this. They are your children. I looked at her. I looked at the woman I had shared a bed with for 35 years, the woman who bought a sports car for a boy priest. They are not my children, I said. The room went quiet again. My children would never leave me on a floor to die, I said. My children would never steal from me. My children would never poison each other for money. I looked at Damon. You are a stranger to me, I said. I looked at Jasmine, who was still pale from the soup incident. You are a stranger to me. I looked at all of them. I disown you, I said. I disown you legally. I disown you spiritually. I disown you personally. From this moment on, you do not carry the Moss name. You are trespassers in this house. But Dad Damon cried, tears streaming down his face. We have nowhere to go. I have debt. They will hurt me, then get a job, I said. Pick up a shovel, mix concrete, do what I did, build your own life, because the Bank of Caleb is closed forever. I pointed to the door. Get out, I said. They didn't move. They couldn't believe it was actually happening. They thought there would be a last-minute reprieve. They thought I would hug them and say it was a lesson. I said, get out. I roared. My voice shook the crystal glasses on the table. Security guards stepped out from the hallway. They were big men. They didn't smile. Escort them off the property, I ordered, and if they return, arrest them for trespassing. The guards moved in. They grabbed Hunter by the arm. They took Courtney by the elbow. They shepherded the flock of vultures toward the door. Lucille paused at the threshold. She looked back at me. Her eyes were empty. "Goodbye, Caleb," she whispered. I didn't answer. I turned my back on them. I poured myself a glass of wine. I heard the front door open and close. I heard the crunch of gravel as they were marched down the driveway. I heard Courtney sobbing. I heard Hunter cursing. Then there was silence. I took a sip of wine. It tasted sweet. It tasted like freedom. I was alone in the big house. The furniture was rented. The family was gone. But for the first time in years, the air felt clean. I had cut out the cancer. Now I could finally heal. The driveway was long and dark. The only light came from the security floodlights that cut through the night like prison searchlights. My family was walking down the asphalt. They were a pathetic parade of ruined finery. Courtney was limping because she had broken a heel. Damon was dragging his feet. Hunter was muttering curses under his breath. They reached the large iron gates at the bottom of the hill. They thought their punishment was over. They thought they would just walk to the main road and call a taxi and go back to their miserable lives. They were wrong. As the gates swung open, they were met with a wall of red and blue light. It was blinding. It pulsed in the darkness. It was not a single patrol car responding to a trespassing call. It was a blockade. 3 unmarked black sedans were parked across the exit. Uniformed officers stood by the fenders with their hands resting on their belts. But the men in the center were not in uniform. They were wearing cheap suits and windbreakers with yellow lettering on the back. Hunter stopped dead in his tracks. He knew what those jackets meant. He worked in finance. He knew that the Economic Crimes Unit does not come out at night for a noise complaint. "What is this?" Lucille cried, shielding her eyes from the glare. "Is this necessary, Caleb? You called the SWAT team just to kick us out." I walked down the driveway behind them. I stayed in the shadows. I wanted to see their faces when the other shoe dropped. "Stay where you are," a voice boomed from the lead car. "Put your hands where we can see them." "This is harassment," Hunter shouted. "We are leaving. My father-in-law kicked us out. We have rights." "You have the right to remain silent," the detective said, stepping into the light. He was a thick-set man with a face that had seen too many liars. He held up a badge. "I am Detective Miller with the Fraud Division. Which one of you is Hunter Reed?" Hunter took a step back. He bumped into Damon. "I am Hunter," he whispered. "And which one is Damon Moss?" the detective asked. Damon raised a trembling hand. "Me." "You are both under arrest," the detective said. "Arrest for what?" Courtney shrieked. She tried to step in front of her husband, but a uniformed officer gently pushed her aside. "For trespassing. This is a civil matter." "It is not trespassing, ma'am," the detective said, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "It is bank fraud, wire fraud, and aggravated identity theft." The words hung in the humid air. Bank fraud. Lucille turned to look at her sons. Her mouth was open. She looked from Hunter to Damon. "What did you do?" she whispered. I stepped forward into the light. "They didn't just steal a wallet, Lucille," I said. My voice was calm and steady. "They stole my name." Sarah Goldberg walked up beside me. She was holding a thick file. She handed it to the detective. "Tell them, Sarah," I said. Sarah opened the file. She shone a flashlight on the documents. 3 weeks ago, Sarah explained, Hunter and Damon visited the First National Bank. They presented a power of attorney document. They claimed Caleb was too ill to travel. They applied for a second mortgage on this estate. A cash-out refinance for $2 million. Lucille gasped. $2 million. "They forged my signature," I said. I looked at Damon. I recognized the penmanship. It was shaky. "You tried to make it look like an old man's signature. But you forgot that I don't sign my name with a loop on the C. I never have." "That is why you needed the cruise," I continued. "You weren't going on vacation. You were running away. You knew the bank would send a confirmation letter to the house. You needed to intercept the mail. You needed me out of the way or dead so the bank wouldn't call me to verify." Damon began to shake. He looked like he was going to vomit. "We were going to pay it back," he stammered. "It was a sure thing, Dad. Hunter had a tip, a crypto investment. We were going to double the money and pay off the mortgage before you even noticed. You gambled my house on a crypto tip," I asked. "It crashed," Hunter whispered. "The market crashed the day we left for the cruise. The money was gone in 4 hours. So you hoped I would die," I said. Hunter didn't answer, but his silence screamed the truth. If I died, the life insurance would pay off the mortgage. If I died, the fraud would be buried in the probate process. My death was their exit strategy. That is why you wanted the conservatorship, Sarah added. You needed legal control to stop the bank from foreclosing when you missed the first payment next month. You weren't trying to save Caleb. You were trying to save yourselves from prison. The detective stepped forward. Turn around, he ordered. Hunter turned around slowly. He looked like a man walking to the gallows. The detective grabbed his wrists. The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was loud and metallic. Click, click, click. Damon tried to run. It was a foolish instinct. He took 2 steps toward the woods before an officer tackled him. They hit the ground hard. Damon screamed as his face hit the gravel. They hauled him up. His expensive suit was torn. His nose was bleeding. They cuffed his hands behind his back. "Mom, help me?" Damon wailed. He sounded like a child. "Mom, don't let them take me." Lucille stood frozen. She looked at her sons in chains. She looked at the police cars. She looked at me. "Caleb, please," she begged. She fell to her knees on the asphalt. "Drop the charges. They are your sons. They made a mistake. They will pay it back. I will work. I will do anything." "It is not up to me, Lucille," I said. "It is up to the state prosecutor. Fraud over $1 million carries a mandatory minimum sentence. They are going away for a long time." They shoved Hunter into the back of the first squad car. He banged his head on the doorframe, but he didn't seem to feel it. He was staring at me through the window. His eyes were dead. They dragged Damon to the second car. He was sobbing uncontrollably. He was calling for his mother. He was calling for God. Courtney was screaming at the police. She was telling them she was an influencer. She was telling them this was a mistake. An officer handed her a citation. "You are being charged as an accessory after the fact," the officer said. "We have evidence you knew about the loan. You signed the witness line on the forged deed." Courtney stopped screaming. She stared at the paper. She realized that she wasn't just poor, she was a felon. The detective walked over to me. "We have everything we need, Mr. Moss," he said. "Thank you for your cooperation. We will need you to come in tomorrow to give a formal statement." "I will be there," I said. The police cars started their engines. The lights flashed against the trees, creating a strobe effect of tragedy. I watched my sons being driven away. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel victory. I felt a heavy finality. I had built this family with the same hands I used to build skyscrapers, but I had built it on a foundation of sand, and now the tide had finally come in. Lucille was still on her knees crying into the dirt. Jasmine was standing by the gate looking at her phone, probably deleting every post that linked her to her brothers. I turned to Sarah. "Turn off the floodlights," I said. "Why?" she asked. "Because the show is over," I said, "and I am tired." The lights clicked off. The driveway plunged back into darkness. The red tail lights of the police cars faded into the distance. I walked back up the hill toward my empty house. I walked alone. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying the weight of ungrateful men on my back. I was light. I was free. And tomorrow I would start building something new. Something that would last. 3 months have passed since the night the floodlights turned off at my estate. Time moves differently now. It does not move to the rhythm of construction deadlines or family obligations. It moves with the tide. But while my life has opened up into a vast ocean of possibilities, the lives of my former family have shrunk down to the size of a prison cell and a studio apartment. Justice is not always swift, but in this case it was relentless. The evidence Sarah Goldberg handed to the district attorney was airtight. There was no wiggle room. There was no plea bargain that could save them from the consequences of their own greed. Hunter is no longer the arrogant financial wizard who looked down on waiters. He is now inmate number 8,940 at the state correctional facility. He was sentenced to 5 years for bank fraud and identity theft. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that he works in the prison laundry. The man who refused to carry his own luggage now washes the dirty socks of convicted felons for 12 cents an hour. He tried to call me once from the prison payphone. I saw the collect call notification on my screen. I pressed decline. I do not accept charges from strangers. Damon did not fare much better. He crumbled under questioning. He cried. He blamed Hunter. He blamed his mother. But the judge did not care about his tears. He received 4 years. The loan shark he owed money to eventually found out where he was. I heard Damon had a very unfortunate accident in the prison shower involving a bar of soap and a broken nose. He is learning the hard way that in the real world you cannot bully your way out of a debt. Courtney avoided prison, but she did not avoid punishment. She was given 3 years of probation and 500 hours of community service, but her real sentence was social. The live stream of her meltdown went viral. It has 10 million views. She is the face of ungrateful entitlement. No brand will touch her. No marketing firm will hire her. She currently works the night shift at a 24-hour diner on the highway. I drove past it last week. I saw her through the window. She was wearing a stained apron pouring coffee for a trucker. She looked tired. She looked old. She looked like someone who finally understood the value of $1. And then there is Lucille, my wife of 35 years. She was not charged with the fraud, but the divorce left her with nothing. The church she loved so much, the community she sacrificed our money to impress, turned its back on her. When the photos of her and the young pastor came out, the congregation did not offer forgiveness. They offered judgment. She lives in a 300-square-foot studio apartment above a laundromat. The noise of the washing machines vibrates through her floorboards day and night. She walks to the grocery store because her car was repossessed. She eats canned soup alone. Sometimes she stands outside the gates of my estate looking up at the house. But the gates never open. She chose a cruise over my life. Now she is drowning on dry land. I do not feel sorry for them. Pity is a luxury I can no longer afford. They made their choices. They bet against me, and they lost. I took a deep breath of the salt air. It filled my lungs, clearing out the last remnants of the dust from the construction sites and the stale air of the hospital room. The water of the Caribbean is a color that does not exist on Instagram. It is a deep, shifting blue that commands respect. I am sitting on the aft deck of the Seawolf. It is a 60-foot yacht. It is not a rental. It is mine. I am not alone. But for the first time in decades, I am not lonely. Sitting in the chair next to me is Maria. She is not wearing scrubs. She is wearing a sun hat and a light linen dress. She is reading a book and smiling. I hired her 3 weeks ago. I offered her double her hospital salary to be my private medical concierge. She hesitated at first. She said she had patients who needed her. I told her that she could bring her daughter on the boat during school breaks. I told her that I needed someone who cared about the person, not the purse. She accepted. Every morning she checks my blood pressure. Every evening we cook dinner together. She tells me stories about her life in the Philippines. I tell her stories about the skyscrapers I built. There is no agenda. There is only respect. Sarah Goldberg is here too. She flew down for the weekend to finalize the paperwork for the foundation. She is sitting at the table with her laptop, but she has a cocktail in her hand. She looks relaxed. The shark has finally stopped swimming. Caleb Sarah calls out, "The transfer to St. Jude is complete. The first wing of the Stroke Recovery Center will be named after you." I nod. I reel in my fishing line. "Name it after the paramedic," I said. "Name it after the man who told Lucille I was dying. If he hadn't made that call, I never would have known the truth." Sarah smiles. She types something on her keyboard. Done. I look out at the horizon. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. It is quiet. No screaming. No demands for money. No fake tears. Just the sound of the waves slapping against the hull and the ice clinking in my glass. For 40 years, I thought family was blood. I thought it was the DNA you shared and the name on the birth certificate. I thought that if you provided enough, if you sacrificed enough, eventually they would love you back. I was a builder. I thought I could build a family like I built a house, brick by brick, check by check. But you cannot build on a rotten foundation. I learned the hard way that family is not biology. Family is loyalty. Family is the people who show up when the ambulance comes. Family is the people who stay when the money is gone. Family is Maria holding my hand when I was terrified. Family is Sarah fighting for my dignity in a courtroom. My biological family is gone. I cut them off like a gangrenous limb. And yes, there is a scar. There will always be a scar. But the wound has healed. I am healthier now than I was 10 years ago. My blood pressure is normal. My heart is strong. And my wallet is closed to everyone except those who earn the right to open it. I cast my line back into the water. I feel a tug. It is a strong fish, a fighter. I smile. I have fight left in me too. I look at the camera. I know you are watching. I know there are thousands of you out there who feel like I did. You feel used. You feel unappreciated. You feel like an ATM machine with a heartbeat. Listen to me. It is not too late. You are not a victim unless you choose to be. You have the power to change the locks. You have the power to rewrite the will. You have the power to say no. Do not wait for a stroke to wake you up. Do not wait for them to leave you on the floor. Look at the people around you. Look at their actions, not their words. If they only love you when the sun is shining, they are not family. They are tourists. And it is time to cancel their vacation. My name is Caleb Moss. I survived a stroke. I survived a betrayal. And I am living my best life on the open sea. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of truth and consequences. And tell me in the comments below. Have you ever had to cut a toxic person out of your life? How did it feel when you finally closed the door? I will see you in the next video. Until then, remember, your worth is not in what you give, it is in who you are. Peace. I learned that the title of father or husband is not a lifetime appointment if the people holding the other end of the contract breach it. I spent 40 years thinking my value was in my checkbook. I thought if I built them a castle, they would treat me like a king. I was wrong. Respect cannot be bought and loyalty cannot be inherited. It must be earned. The moment I stopped paying for their affection was the moment I found out how much it was truly worth. 0. Do not be afraid to walk away from people who hurt you, even if you share a last name. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to lock the door and throw away the key. Peace is better than a crowded table of liars. If Caleb's story of justice resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of truth and consequences. Let me know in the comments below. What is the one deal breaker that would make you cut off a family member forever? I read every comment. See you in the next video.